The story begins with the protagonist sitting down. His name is Jang Chu, a graduate student from Korea. Or rather, he was, because the day before, something extraordinary happened. Without warning, Jang Chu found himself transformed into none other than the Demon King Kratos, the final boss of his favorite game, Paladin of Blood. Ironically, he had always thought the game had a fairly ordinary storyline, with the central goal being the revival of an ancient hero who had long since fallen into slumber. But now, Jang Chu finds himself living in that world. He brushes aside the thought of the game's plot, deeming it unworthy of discussion. It adds nothing to his current predicament. Just then, his servant, Sephiroth, approaches and informs him that preparations for war are complete. The demon army is fully mobilized, and the bloodthirsty Ashura is practically drooling at the prospect of the upcoming grand invasion. Jang Chu's forces are formidable. Among them is the Ice Monarch, Sergei, at level 531. Then there's Hartok, the Archduke of Mist, at level 555. Accompanying him is Baal, the Black Rock Tyrant, a powerhouse sitting at level 539. These fearsome beings stand before their king, anticipation and eagerness burning in their eyes. Rising to his feet, the Demon King lets out a commanding roar, drawing the undivided attention of his entire army. He begins by ordering all demons to, and then pauses dramatically. The sudden silence spreads like wildfire. All his elite servants stand alert, hanging on to his next words. And then, to everyone's shock, he declares that all attacks are to cease immediately. They are to begin practicing agriculture instead. A stunned silence follows. Then chaos erupts. Furious cries echo as his subordinates protest this absurd order. Startled, Jang Chu nearly soils himself at their terrifying rage. But despite the panic, his own expression becomes so intimidating that it freezes everyone in place. The Demon King's terrifying glare is enough to re-establish control. At this moment, a notification rings out. 20th playthrough started. Jang Chu, now fully aware, rises once again and turns to look beside him. There stands Kim Kai, a character at level 9990. A deep sense of dread fills Jang Chu. He knows this character is capable of annihilating him with ease. Flashbacks begin to flood his mind. Back in Korea, Jang Chu had studied agriculture in university with a dream of becoming a wealthy farmer. A genius in his field, he quickly rose to the top of his class. Unfortunately, his talent came at a cost. Everyone constantly asked him for help, writing theses, doing projects, even plowing fields. He had become an elite slave. Exhausted and underappreciated, he was left wondering why he did all the hard work while his professors reaped the glory. This imbalance eventually triggered a breakdown. One day, he snapped and screamed that he'd destroy everything. With zero dopamine left in his brain, he felt like he was spiraling toward insanity. The only escape? Video games. There was one game in particular that he couldn't let go of, Paladin of Blood. It was infamous for its punishing difficulty. No one had ever cleared it 19 times. Determined to achieve something, anything, Jang Chu poured himself into the game, pulling all-nighters, grinding endlessly. And finally, he did it. Despite the bags under his eyes and a face twisted by exhaustion, he had become the first player in the world to complete the game 19 times. At least in that world, he was the strongest. But he knew that the 20th playthrough would be brutal, pure hell, and he would need to level up even more to survive. He opened his inventory, his eyes gleaming with intensity. He was already level 9990, and the max level was just 9 levels away. He vowed to stop once he reached it, although he had no idea how many years it had taken to get here. Then, a notification popped up, Start 20th playthrough. Without hesitation, he pressed yes. Suddenly, a blinding light burst out of the television. Jang Chu recoiled, shouting in alarm. His soul was yanked from his body, screaming like never before, and pulled into the screen. Moments later, he found himself falling through the sky, utterly bewildered. In free fall with a dumbfounded expression, Jang Chu tried to stay calm. He figured he must be in soul form. He was blue, after all, and maybe that meant he wouldn't die upon impact. As he glanced around, he spotted a colossal tower in the distance, the Tower of Life. The realization hit him, he was inside the Paladin of Blood game world. Still plummeting at jet engine speed, he spotted what looked like the Paladin's tomb. He panicked again. Could he be about to possess his old character, Kim Kai, the nearly max-level hero? If so, his new life as an invincible badass was about to begin. But as he drew closer, he saw Kinch's goofy appearance and felt an unexpected wave of regret. Suddenly, he wasn't so sure he wanted to become that character anymore. But before he could dwell on it, his soul veered sharply in another direction, streaking across the sky like a missile. Still screaming, he begged the heavens not to send him into another body. But then he saw it, the Demon King's vessel. And sure enough, that's where his soul was headed. Back in the present, now fully aware of what had transpired, Jiang Chu, inhabiting the body of Demon King Kratos, lets out a long sigh. Thinking about all this makes his head throb. If only he hadn't hesitated when he saw Kinch's ridiculous appearance, he would now be inside the body of an overpowered hero. Instead, he ended up as the final boss. And he can't help but feel like the biggest fool of them all. Zephyros was calmly walking toward the throne when he suddenly heard shouting echoing from beyond the great hall doors. The voices were heated, and as he approached, he saw the elite squad of generals arguing. They were accusing the Demon King, Kratos, of becoming weaker, and that the reason he had ordered a halt to the invasion was out of fear, not strategy. Ashura, always the most aggressive, sneered that they should take advantage of the situation. He suggested they band together, cut off the leader's head, and split control of the kingdom among themselves, just as Kratos had once done to seize power from the previous Demon King. But one of them raised a valid concern. What if the Demon King hadn't grown weaker? In that case, at least two of them could suffer devastating losses, or worse, die in the process. Sergei coolly stated that if Ashura was willing to serve as their shield, then maybe it could work. Meanwhile, the rock tyrant, Bull, was entirely uninterested in the politics. His thoughts were consumed by hunger. The Demon Prince joined the discussion and proposed a plan. What if they could find undeniable proof that the Demon King had truly weakened? In that case, all agreed, they would strike him down without hesitation. All except Bull, who remained silent, still focused on his empty stomach. Outside the room, Zephyros quietly listened to their plotting. He said nothing and simply turned back. Later, inside the castle, Zephyros reported his findings to the king. He informed Jiang Chu, now inhabiting the body of the Demon King, that the army's mortality rate had dropped sharply, but troubling news followed. There had been incidents of demons devouring each other, and some had even fled the demon realm without warning. The main character listened intently. Zephyros then added that the four great demon generals were enraged and now openly questioned his strength. Worse, they were planning to unite and assassinate him. This news alarmed Jiang Chu. If all four attacked at once, he wouldn't stand a chance. It became crystal clear, the moment he appeared weak, he was as good as dead. His thoughts drifted to his old avatar, Kim Kai. If he hadn't rejected the body, perhaps it still lay untouched somewhere, lifeless. This gave him a reckless idea. Maybe he should invade the human world instead. As if on cue, his servants arrived, holding a crystal orb. They explained it was a video sent by General Agmir, capturing footage of the Paladin's tomb. As the recording played, Jiang Chu saw a familiar sight, his old avatar mercilessly slaughtering monsters that begged for mercy. A cold chill ran down his spine. That was definitely Kim Kai. And the realization terrified him. He tried to shake the image from his mind, but it haunted him. The video felt like a twisted film made by a lunatic, and the thought of breathing the same air as that monstrosity was horrifying. He quickly concluded, abandoning the demon realm was no longer an option. But the situation was hopeless. If he surrendered, the generals would see it as weakness and kill him. If he confronted Kim Kai, the Paladin would probably gouge out his eyes before killing him outright. Faced with two impossible choices, he broke down crying, unable to understand why he was trapped in this cruel world and denied even the smallest measure of happiness. At last, he stood up. There was only one solution now that the food crisis had been handled. He needed to take decisive action to pacify the demons. As he began walking, his servant asked where he was going. The Demon King responded calmly, he was going to inspect the farmland. Zephyros blinked, confused. "My lord, I didn't quite understand," he said. Jiang Chu turned, puzzled. "What didn't you understand?" Zephyros hesitated before answering. "It's just who the mighty Lord Kratos is supposed to be narcissistic, arrogant, and utterly vile. That kind of behavior just now, it was absolutely revolting." He then pleaded with his king never to act that way again. The main character could hardly believe it. What the hell got into this guy? Was he trying to provoke him? Had Zephyros always had this strange personality? Jiang Chu recalled that in the game, Zephyros had only appeared once, right before the final battle against the Demon King. He came without explanation, and yet that single scene made him an incredibly popular character among fans. He remembered playing as the Paladin. Back then, Zephyros had told him that the Demon King no longer wished to fight. In response, Jiang Qiu, still in his player mindset, had punched him once and ended the battle. Zephyros had collapsed, lamenting his own weakness and his inability to protect the Demon King. That single act, the MC now realized, made everyone believe Zephyros was incredibly loyal. Back in the present, Zephyros commented again. "I never thought I'd live to see such a disaster. This is the first Demon King to lose the trust of the demon race so quickly." Jiang Qiu could only grit his teeth. This guy is so annoying. Then Zephyros pulled out a notebook and began scribbling. Without looking up, he asked if the Demon King seriously wanted to practice agriculture in the demon lands. He even commented that he didn't know his memory was as good as a pigeon's. That was it. Jiang Qiu exploded in anger. "Calm down. You're speaking to the Demon King." But Zephyros wasn't finished. "I'll continue anyway," he said casually, walking toward the exit. Once outside, he explained that both the current and previous Demon Kings had attempted to cultivate the barren demon lands. But with the extreme climate and lifeless soil, it was impossible. "Nothing can bloom here," he said coldly. Jiang Qiu, as Krader, looked out at the desolate landscape. "This is called the Land of Death," he said with confidence. "But with my abilities, it can be restored." Yet deep inside, he knew the truth. He hated agriculture. But whether he liked it or not, it might be the very thing that saved his life. The Demon King crouched down and scooped up a handful of soil. Without hesitation, he shoved it into his mouth. From a distance, Zephyros quietly observed and scribbled into his notebook, jotting down that the Demon King had finally lost it, reduced to a beggar who eats dirt. This infuriated Jiang Qiu, who snapped, asking what the hell the servant was writing. Zephyros, calm and collected, replied that he was merely doing his duty, recording the chronicles of the Demon King, an essential historical task. According to him, the current entry would conclude that the king's memory had completely deteriorated. Choking, Jiang Qiu spat the soil back out. It was utterly useless, no nutrients, no nitrogen, nothing. He knew better than anyone that nitrogen was critical for plant growth. Despite making up nearly 78% of the atmosphere, nitrogen atoms were bound together by triple covalent bonds, making them chemically stable and unusable by plants. That's why humanity developed nitrogen fixation techniques through chemical engineering, revolutionizing agriculture. Unfortunately, this was the demon realm, no tools, no industry, and certainly no chemical engineering. He stood still, deep in thought, contemplating one last option, harnessing natural nitrogen fixation through lightning. With enough voltage, lightning could oxidize atmospheric nitrogen, turning it into nitrate compounds. Rainwater would then carry these nutrients into the soil. The idea was viable, and it aligned with something he remembered from the game. Demon King Kratos had a signature move, using his own blood as a catalyst for explosive elemental strikes. Jiang Qiu remembered the horrifying technique well. Kratos would claw himself open, releasing vital fluids to generate a deadly combination of lightning and humidity. It was terrifying. But it could work. Determined, Jiang Qiu ordered his servant to step back. He gritted his teeth and slashed his own arm, attempting the blood-based technique. The moment pain shot through his body, he screamed, questioning Kratos' sanity for using such a painful method in every battle. His cries echoed through the field. Then he glanced sideways and froze. The generals were watching him. Their faces said it all, they were increasingly convinced that the Demon King had truly weakened. Bull, still aloof, muttered that the king was clearly not what he used to be. That terrified Jiang Qiu even more. In his mind, Bull wasn't just a glutton, he was an assassin. This strange behavior might be a calculated tactic, meant to provoke and catch him off guard before delivering a fatal strike. Panicking, Jiang Qiu made a desperate decision, better to bleed than die. With newfound determination, he mutilated himself again and unleashed Kratos' bloody lightning strike, his blood splattering the dry soil like tomato sauce. As the soil sizzled with energy, he collapsed in agony, screaming about how excruciating the pain was. Moments later, the generals approached with cold, calculating expressions. One of them asked, "Are you feeling weak, my lord?" Jiang Qiu's heart raced. This is really bad. Elsewhere, in a distant land, Kim Kai, the main character's old game avatar, stood still, lost in thought. His memories of past lives were vague, yet he was certain he had lived more than 10 lives. Each time, he had walked a righteous path. Now, as he gazed at his hand, he couldn't help but feel adrift. The summoning of duty no longer spoke to him. Its silence left him wondering what his purpose was in this life. With a deep breath, he stepped forward. The earth trembled beneath his boots as he moved, his presence imposing. After all, he was level 9990. Those around him felt only dread. Ashura, ever proud and reckless, explained that the demon hierarchy was simple, power ruled, and the strongest was the king. But Jiang Qiu was terrified. Every one of these generals radiated raw strength, and worse, he couldn't even activate basic skills. If it came down to combat, he was dead. From Ashura's point of view, the pressure was immense. Even though the battle hadn't started, he was trembling with built-up strength. Yet, he smiled. He turned and asked, "In your current state, Demon King, can you defeat all of us?" But when he looked back, he saw his fellow generals hiding behind a tree. Confused and panicked, Ashura asked himself what they were doing. The answer was simple: they had no intention of joining unless he weakened the king first. They were demons, after all, strategic, evil, and opportunistic. Zephyros, ever the observer, activated a massive display screen and announced that according to ancient demon traditions, the duel would now be broadcast live. And, of course, once the tradition began, there was no backing out. Ashura flinched. "Wait! Nothing's been confirmed yet," he cried out in fear. Still, he raised his sword and tried to appear calm. He was almost certain the Demon King had weakened. Jiang Qiu clenched his teeth, unsure of what to do. When he first took control of this body, he tested it and found it powerful, but not invincible. He had believed the in-game Demon King to be unbeatable, but the reality was underwhelming. Before he could fully gather his thoughts, Ashura charged. The movement was swift, and Jiang Qiu panicked. Is it a thrust? Or a side slash? There was no time to guess. But, to his own surprise, he dodged it flawlessly. He froze. Did I just dodge that? Then it hit him. Ashura's second step, specifically, his left foot, had turned outward, signaling a forward thrust. It was the exact same pattern as in the game. The fight, the stances, even the rhythm, it was all scripted. The other generals watched with growing interest. They noticed the Demon King's expression when he dodged, sharp, feral, like someone ready to bite off his opponent's arm. Yet, curiously, he didn't counterattack. So, they waited. Ashura lunged again. Jiang Qiu dodged, and this time he understood fully. Every move Ashura made, was exactly like in the game. He remembered the first time he met Ashura in the game. Back then, he couldn't believe such a character had been designed to lose. Ashura's erratic movement patterns and wide-range attacks had made him a nightmare opponent. But now, here in this twisted reality, Jiang Qiu had something Ashura didn't: memory. And that gave him the upper hand. Back in the heat of battle, Jiang Qiu recalled the brutal truth: he had been defeated by this general not once, not twice, but countless times during his gameplay. It was only on his 128th attempt that he finally managed to win. And it wasn't until 19 battles after that first victory that he could finally defeat the general without taking a single hit. Now, standing face to face with Ashura once more, those memories didn't terrify him, they excited him. He knew there was absolutely no reason to be hit again. His expression shifted into something unnerving, so intense that it caused the other 3 generals, still hiding behind the tree, to tremble with unease. Then, like a dancer performing a carefree waltz, Jiang Qiu began dodging Ashura's attacks with fluid grace. Every move felt effortless. It was like a child's game. The other generals were speechless. The Demon King wasn't just avoiding the blows, he was enjoying himself. It was absurd. Ashura, on the other hand, was seething. Each missed strike only made him angrier, while Jiang Qiu's excitement grew. He reminded himself that group attacks were still dangerous, but something far more important dawned on him: this world followed the exact same mechanics as the game. As that realization settled in, a notification popped up in his vision. You have understood one of the basic rules of this world. He blinked, confused. The message looked exactly like the pop-ups from the webtoon. Another message appeared: you have successfully dodged the enemy's attack with high concentration. Suddenly emboldened, he charged forward at full speed. But before he could strike, a new system window opened. Congratulations! A portion of the playable character system has been unlocked. Target function activated. The words puzzled him until he noticed a reticle lock onto Ashura. He recognized it immediately. It was a core feature used to trigger special abilities. With that, he understood what he needed to do. Without hesitation, he scratched himself once again and unleashed his bloody strike, a violent explosion of crimson that scorched the earth. The blast hit Ashura with full force, the sheer intensity of it enough to make the surrounding generals flinch in horror. They shouted in disbelief, "We knew it!" The Demon King was never weak. Jiang Qiu stood before the scorched, kneeling form of Ashura. His servant Sephiroth mumbled bitterly that Ashura had lost. Yet, something didn't feel right. In the game, Bloody Strike was a one-hit kill move. And yet, Ashura was still alive. That's when the dread kicked in. Jiang Qiu remembered, this general had absurd regenerative powers. If left alone, he'd heal and get back up. So, without a second thought, Jiang Qiu used Bloody Strike again. And again. And again. Each blast tore through Ashura's body, the pain relentless. To the onlookers, this wasn't a battle, it was torture. But to Jiang Qiu, it was confusion. He didn't understand why Ashura's health wasn't dropping. He wasn't trying to torture him, he just didn't know what else to do. Suddenly, a bizarre notification appeared. Target's clothing has been stripped. Target now has no armor. He froze. What kind of weird message is that? He muttered, flustered. Don't make it sound like I'm some kind of pervert. To his dismay, another message appeared. Armor inventory system unlocked. Armor removal function activated. Staring at the inventory screen, he saw the clothes he was currently wearing. Just the standard set. It was practically useless in this situation. Still, he didn't have time to process the implications. His top priority now was stopping the general from recovering. He needed a plan. And then it came to him, if the general wasn't losing health, then he could at least use him as a nitrogen injector. He could keep launching bloody strikes on him and fertilize the soil in secret. It was a perfect plan. He glanced at the three generals still hiding behind the tree. They looked absolutely terrified after witnessing the ongoing brutality. That meant no interference. With this reassurance, he called for Sergi. "Tie up the general," he ordered. Sergi turned pale. Her eyes darted from the half-naked, charred body of Ashura to the rope in her hand. She began sweating nervously. "He really wants me to tie up a half-naked man? In front of everyone?" She thought, is he trying to humiliate the guy, or me, or both? Still, duty was duty. Reluctantly, she obeyed, strapping the unlucky general onto a large wooden cross. It was the first step in the MC's next grand plan, building a lightning rod. Ashura's body, though ravaged, was regenerating at an insane pace. Moments later, his eyes snapped open and he bellowed, "The immortal has returned. That bloody strike of yours can't even finish me. You've grown weak, Demon King. Now I'll take your head." But his threats were drowned by another searing wave of bloody strike. His body ignited once more, and he screamed in agony. Jiang Qiu didn't flinch, he had already moved on to step 2, oxidizing the atmospheric nitrogen into nitrites. Next, he called for Heart Talk. Cover the entire area in dense mist. Make it drip with moisture. Heart Talk's eyes gleamed. So the Demon King wants to prime the ground to enhance the effect of lightning strikes. How? Delightfully cruel. Without hesitation, he began spreading mist, thick enough to soak the soil. Step 3 was complete, humidity control. Now came step 4, amplifying the charge. Once again, Jiang Qiu began cutting himself, feeding the bloody energy into the atmosphere, all while screaming internally at how painful it was. But he kept going. Because now, his plan to transform the battlefield into a fertile, supercharged death trap was nearing its final form. Sephiroth stood still, observing without the slightest reaction, in stark contrast to the three generals who were visibly shaken. They watched in horror as the brutal scene unfolded, Ashura's body taking strike after strike, crimson spray painting the ground like grotesque fertilizer. The Demon King's relentless barrage never ceased, not even for a moment, denying the general's body any chance to rest. Jiang Qiu, however, was thrilled. His excitement wasn't because of the violence, but because his agricultural vision was taking form. With each bloody strike, more nitrogen seeped into the soil. If everything went well, the land would become incredibly fertile, and the harvest, it could be historic. Driven by this bizarre but deeply committed goal, young Chu kept going, attacking relentlessly through the entire afternoon up until sunset. When he finally paused, he bent down and scooped some earth into his hand. He could feel it, the transformation had begun. The soil was changing. Still, he knew this was only the start. To create ideal soil, he needed more than nitrogen. Loose, granular soil wouldn't retain water or allow oxygen in. For effective agriculture, he needed a fluffy, aggregated structure, the kind farmers dream of. And so, he stood up slowly, wearing a chilling expression. His next order left everyone frozen in place. Everyone, collect your own poop. The three generals stood paralyzed, utterly unable to believe what they'd just heard. After everything, the torture, the madness, now this? Even for a demon king, it seemed too cruel. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, Kim Kai was making his way through a wooded path when he heard faint cries for help. Turning around, he saw two men desperately calling out to him, begging for assistance. They claimed to have been attacked by goblins and promised a reward if he would help. Kim Kai, wearing his usual intimidating expression, stepped forward, terrifying the men even more. Reaching out his hand, he said calmly, "Don't be afraid. I'm not a suspicious person." But to them, his face alone screamed danger, far beyond suspicious. One of them clutched his leg in pain. Kim Kai placed a firm hand on the man's shoulder and gently said, "Please, show me the way." The man nodded, impressed by Kimchi's strength. "You must be an emissary," he said, before asking who Kim Kai really was. Kim Kai took a deep breath as they continued walking and replied solemnly, "I still need to find out." Back at the castle, the three generals gathered around a table, still reeling from the Demon King's latest command. They sat in silence, disturbed and bewildered. "How the hell are we supposed to carry our own?" Literally, one muttered, unable to even say the word. "Are we supposed to do it, right here?" Sergei trembled the entire time, finding the idea both revolting and insane. Bale, meanwhile, broke the silence, sighing. "It's been a while since I've eaten. I can't poop." Then, casually throwing Sergei under the bus, he added, "And Sergei doesn't poop either." Furious, she shouted, "Don't talk about other people's orifices." Monley folded his arms and said with complete honesty, "Even if I could poop that easily, I wouldn't want to collect it myself." He then suggested a different solution, beating it out of the lower demons. And so, they marched off to a village to find some unfortunate demon for the job. One such demon knelt nervously, pleading, "Please, at least let me go outside." "I can't, not with everyone watching." The guard shrugged. That's what the others said too. None of them succeeded. Just then, Hartok burst into the room. "What's taking so long?" he asked, walking toward the trembling demon. "Why haven't you provided what was requested?" Terrified, the demon stammered, "I haven't eaten for days, Lord." It's hard to let out even a turd. Hartok's dark aura flared, and he grabbed the demon's neck, sneering. "Thank you for the idea." With a grim smile, he summoned Shadow Claw and prepared to force a result by sheer violence. The demon screamed, begging for mercy. Before the situation could escalate, Bal intervened, grabbing Hartok's arm and stopping the attack. "What are you doing?" Hartok growled. Bal calmly replied, "An empty stomach may survive, but a dead one can't poop. We need them alive if we want results." Monley nodded in agreement. "A good point, surprisingly. But here's a thought, what if we fed them the meat of that one cocky general? Wouldn't that help them produce everything we need?" The tension spiked instantly. The room darkened as both generals released their auras, standing face to face with enough power to level the village. The air buzzed with energy. At that moment, the Demon King entered. Without hesitation, he unleashed a spell that slammed both of them to the ground. "What the hell are you two doing?" he barked. After calming the chaos, he looked at the others and clarified, "Lower demons aren't the only animals that can poop." Later, the entire group gathered at the castle. The Demon King, now in a more serious tone, explained, "Feces have no nutritional value on their own. We need usable waste for fertilizer." Zephyros frowned. "What exactly is fertilizer?" The MC explained, "It's the substance that gives nutrients to soil. Normally, it's made using things like wood ashes, herbs, certain soils, eggshells, and chicken poop." The group blinked in disbelief. He continued, "As for the ashes and herbs, we can use the empty houses we passed earlier. But the eggshells and chicken poop, that'll be the real problem." That's when another idea struck him. After forming his plan, the Demon King asks his bouquet, a living, obedient plant companion, for the map of their land. Once it unfurls before him, he studies it closely and immediately recognizes it. As expected, it's the same layout from the game he once played. That means everything is still in place, including the key area he's targeting. His destination is the habitat of the demonic seagulls. In the game, this area was notorious. The fields were always filled with these birds, which could absorb vast nutrients from human lands. Even better for his plan, the demonic seagulls nested, laid their eggs, and defecated all in the same location, a perfect zone for collecting fertilizer ingredients. Zephyros, sharp-eyed and perceptive, asks if the Demon King truly plans to gather the feces of demonic seagulls. The king is impressed. His servant has caught on quickly. Four Eyes then chimes in, revealing that the place they are retargeting is known as the cliff from which no one returns. There are no stable routes leading up. Anyone who falls will be swallowed by the tides below. It's dangerous, unstable, and deadly. Jiang Chu, however, rises confidently. He already knows all of this. That place, after all, is usually forbidden by the system. No player should be able to reach it. But now, he's no longer just a player. He's the Demon King. The system's rules no longer apply. Together, they travel to the cliff. The generals watch from below, trying to understand what their king intends to do. The Demon King knows the truth. Many before him had tried to reach the demonic seagulls, all consumed by the merciless waves. But he isn't planning to die today. He turns to his generals and declares his plan. He will climb to the top, collect the poop and eggshells in a bag, and throw it down to them. If it works, the starving citizens will eat again. Bale stares at him, remembering the villagers, defenseless, desperate, starving. Jiang Chu moves to the base of the cliff. This would be his 13th attempt. He had failed so many times in the past. Hundreds of deaths. Yet this time would be different. He leaps. His hand catches the stone ledge. He grips it tightly. Everyone below holds their breath. Suddenly, the Demon King opens his equipment inventory and disables all his clothing, becoming completely naked on the side of the cliff. The generals are stunned. From below, they see the Demon King half-merged into the cliff wall, his exposed rear sticking out for all to see. Confusion gives way to outrage. Sergi, mortified, turns her face away and yells, "What the hell is he doing?" Moments later, he equips his clothing again. But just as Sergi dares to look back, he unequips everything again, once more bugging himself into the rock. Over and over, dress, undress, bug, repeat, he slowly climbs using a glitch in the system. Finally, after this chaotic display, he reaches the top. He knew this would work. In a world governed by game mechanics, a hidden peak, one unreachable by design, must contain an equipment inventory glitch. With that logic, he pieced everything together and proved the impossible was possible. Just then, Bale shouts, inspired by the king's determination. His Majesty said everyone will eat again. Then I'll help too. He takes off running toward the cliff. Zephyros panics. Stop! That place, only the king can reach. But Bale is already airborne. I will follow His Majesty. The Demon King, startled, turns around and sees the big guy midair, and falling. Fast! No! You can't grab on, he yells. But it's too late. Bale's hand reaches out in desperation. The king grabs it, bracing himself using the same glitch. The weight is immense. His muscles strain. His arm threatens to tear apart. And in that moment, he hesitates. Why am I trying to save this fool? He wonders. Bale is one of the 4 demonic generals. A threat. Maybe it would be better to just let go. But then a memory flashes. A student once knelt before him, pleading through tears, "Please help me just this once. The professor won't accept my thesis. But if you ask, maybe he'll listen." Please, the Demon King, then just another elite student, stood silent. That boy was a mere junior. The request was dangerous. Helping might have cost him something. So he had coldly replied, "That's your problem." He walked away, but he still remembered that boy's crying face. Maybe, if he had gone beyond his own limits just once, that student would have smiled. Fueled by that guilt, he grits his teeth and clutches Bale's hand even harder. This time, he will go beyond his limits. With his arm cracking, bones straining under the pressure, he lets out a mighty roar and hurls Bale up with everything he has. The general lands safely atop the cliff. Moments later, the Demon King climbs up after him, panting, his arm throbbing with pain. Baal stares at him, stunned. His Majesty had saved him and got injured doing it. But why? Your Majesty, Baal says softly. Why? Why did you save me? The Demon King, still breathless from his climb and the near disaster, takes a long inhale and says quietly, "It hurts less than abandoning a follower and regretting it later." These words pierce through Baal's heart. Tears begin to well up in the general's eyes. Jiang Cho, deep in thought, realizes he should have done the same for that student all those years ago. In his heart, he whispers a silent apology, asking for forgiveness, something he never had the courage to say until now. Just then, a system notification appears. Notice, though not fully adapted to the body of Lord Demon Kratos, you've exerted your full strength. Achievement unlocked, sincere gratitude of a demonic general. The system recognizes that Baal, one of the 4 powerful demon generals, has expressed heartfelt thanks. The MC blinks in surprise. So that's what he looks like when he's grateful. Another line follows. In recognition of this feat, a new subsystem has been activated, happiness points accumulation. Your army will now generate happiness points when fed and satisfied. The MC is puzzled. Points? What do they even buy? Ice cream. The system snaps back dryly, obviously not. What kind of demon world sells ice cream? The snide response actually startles him. The system then clarifies, for every demon soldier who feels happy and well-fed, 1 happiness point will be earned. These points can be used to purchase attribute increases. At the moment, the MC can only access 20% of Demon King Kratos' full strength. Each of his 4 main attributes, resistance, mental strength, physical power, and magic power, are locked at this base percentage. The next milestone is 30%. The MC considers his options and decides to aim for 10% more resistance. But the system displays upgrade cost, 50 happiness points, current balance, 0. He also learns that skill upgrades are possible. His only active skill is Bloody Strike E level 1, which costs 250 points to level up. Disappointed, he realizes he's not there yet, but if he plays this smart, gathers enough happiness, feeds his people, builds loyalty, he can grow stronger and ensure his survival. Looking over at Baal, he notes something strange. Being appreciated actually feels kinda nice. A wicked smile crosses his face. From Baal's perspective, though, that same smile is terrifying. The Demon King's face looks like that of a predator. Baal gulps, convinced that if he disobeys, he'll be torn in half. After all, Lord Demon Kratos is infamous for cruelty. There's no way he saved him out of kindness. Suddenly, the Demon King stands and shouts to the others, holding up a bag filled with a mix of seagull feces and broken eggshells. "I'm throwing it down. Catch it!" The generals below are horrified. Before they can protest, the bag is launched, and its foul contents explode mid-air, raining down in all directions. "Catch the crap," the king yells, grinning wildly. His excitement is unsettling, but he's completely invested now. He starts explaining the steps of fertilizer production. Step 1, seagull poop and burnt ashes. Step 2, prepare the soil. With no shame, he turns to Sergei and says, "Mash it. Mix it all together." Sergei blinks. "Did I hear that right?" "Yes. You've got multiple arms. Use them." She erupts in fury. "I am the Ice Monarch. My arms were not made to stir feces." "Oh? Then maybe you'd prefer a simpler task." The MC smirks, pointing ominously toward the cross, where the captured Ashura is still tied. Instantly recognizing the threat, Sergei throws herself into the task, furiously mixing the foul sludge. Anything was better than that fate. Watching all of this, Jiang Cho exhales a shaky breath. He knows his team is volatile, unpredictable. As Demon King, he can't afford to let his guard down. Still, they're tools, powerful tools, and he will use each one to achieve his ambitions. With step 2 complete, it's time for step 3, water. He calls out to Hardtok, ordering him to fill the area with mist. Hardtok hesitates. "Your Majesty, you're sure? The humidity will make the smell unbearable." The MC says nothing. He simply points again toward the cross. No words needed. Hardtok instantly complies, flying above to release a dense, clinging mist over the area. The Demon King walks over to Baal and asks, "Is it soft enough?" Baal nods. Yes, Majesty. After the water, it's perfectly mushy. Jiang Cho then reflects on the third step. To properly ferment the fertilizer, it should be stored in a dry place and covered with a sheet of seagull feathers. But this entire process takes too much time. If he truly wants to cover vast lands in fertile soil, he'll need more help. He has no choice, he must mobilize every demon, even the low-rank ones. He's not thrilled by the idea, but he knows if it's for survival, if it's to gain strength, he'll use his authority as Demon King to get it done. Elsewhere, deep in the demon realm, in a quiet cabin, a little girl calls out softly, "Papa." Inside a remote cabin in the demon realm, a man kneels beside his daughter. His voice is soft. "What's wrong?" The little girl, Flute, with tears streaming down her cheeks, pleads through trembling lips, "Papa, please devour me." The man stiffens, pain etched into every line of his face. "I told you before," he says gently, "don't say things like that." But the child doesn't stop. She just lowers her head and whispers, "I miss Mama." His heart sinks. Memories rush back, horrifying ones. A monstrous beast, overcome with hunger, had once lunged at his daughter. She could do nothing but scream as its enormous maw drew closer. But in that final moment, her mother had stepped forward, arms open, shielding her. Flute had watched, wide-eyed, as her mother smiled at her one last time, before being swallowed whole in a single bite. Shaken by the memory, the man mutters, "If I lose her, then there's no point in living at all." Suddenly, the door creaks open. The Demon King enters with his generals in tow. His presence is overwhelming. "You still have the strength to scream," the Demon King says coldly. "Take him away." The man, Drock, struggles against the guards, shouting, "Wait! My daughter is still here. If you leave her, the high-ranked demons will eat her." But there's no mercy. Beryl drags him out as Flute cries for her father. Nearby, Zapira reports, "We've gathered 20 demons so far. We'll need more." At that moment, Jiang Cho, the Demon King, glances back. His eyes lock onto Flute, sobbing and helpless. It shakes him. He remembers a moment from the game, a scene where his character encountered a similar child. Back then, unable to watch her suffer, he had pressed the controller frantically, ending the scene with a decisive blow to prevent her torment. Now, that same child is in front of him, not on a screen, but real. And this time, he has the power to make a different choice. He storms past the guards and shouts, "Stop this madness! Devouring your own kind is despicable." Turning to Zapiro, he commands, "Gather the rest of the demons. Everyone, even the lowest ranks, will help. It's time to make fertilizer. Now." He knows this is tyranny, but he accepts it. He is the Demon King, and sacrifices must be made to reach his goal. Time passes. The lower demons work tirelessly, pounding waste into fertilizer. Durak, one of them, groans, "Why are we doing this? I'm exhausted, and even if the land becomes fertile, there's nothing to plant." His friend hushes him. "Quiet! You'll lose your head if the king hears that." Durak grumbles, "We'll die anyway." That's when the Demon King appears. Curious about what we'll plant. Durak panics. "I didn't mean it like that." But the king simply says, "Come with me." They walk until they reach a field where the Demon King had once glimpsed a purple flower. He confirms it, "We're planting the seed of that flower. Bal and the others have already begun collecting them." Drock, now slightly calmer, cautiously asks, "Your Majesty, forgive me, but isn't that flower poisonous? Consuming it causes unbearable pain. It could even kill someone strong like you." Without flinching, the Demon King pulls the plant from the soil. "This land has nothing that can be chewed. So we test. If it's edible, we cultivate it." Confused, Drock asks, "Test? Who's testing it?" The Demon King replies with eerie calm, "At this very moment, your daughter is." Drock's blood runs cold. He bolts toward the house, screaming for Flute not to eat the flower. But as he throws open the door, he freezes. Flute is there, smiling, happily munching on the seed. "I feel full, Papa, and it doesn't hurt at all." Shaking, he stammers, "You're okay?" She nods. "Yes. Lord Zephos and Lord Baal gave me food yesterday too. I feel fine." The Demon King steps in. "Now do you believe me?" he asks. He explains, in certain human lands, poisonous plants were made edible through cultivation. It solved famine. The plant they're using? It's called a potato. Flute beams with joy. I can't believe a Demon King is being so kind to someone like me. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. System notification. Several demons feel happiness after eating. Happiness points earned, +1. The Demon King pauses, glancing at the system screen. 1 point. He looks again at Flute, her face lit with pure joy, tears of gratitude in her eyes. He remembers the girl in the game, starving and desperate. That same child is now safe, full, and laughing. A small smile touches his lips. I'm a Demon King, not a statue, he mutters to himself. Then, raising his voice, he says with an evil grin, a little worm like you just needs to eat until you are re-full and grow strong. The room falls silent. The others exchange nervous glances. That smile, those words, surely he means to fatten her up and devour her later. They're convinced of it. After all, he's the Demon King. Deep within his dark territory lies his fortress, the Chasm of Antia. The Demon King's domain was divided into 5 distinct territories, and the place they stood now, the Chasm of Antia, was the deepest and harshest among them. By night, it turned frigid. By day, it scorched like a furnace. The climate was as brutal and unforgiving as the Andean mountains. Jiang Cho, the Demon King, knew this well. Long ago, the people of the Andes had faced severe food shortages. In desperation, they turned to wild, poisonous potatoes, inedible by normal standards. But humans were resourceful. Even what nature declared inedible, they managed to transform into nourishment. Now, in the demon realm, a similar transformation was about to unfold. From the fields, DAC shouted, "Your Majesty! I've already spread them all." The Demon King wasted no time. BL! Crush them all! Without hesitation, the massive demon leapt forward, slamming his foot into the ground, pulverizing the frozen tubers beneath him. Jiang Cho watched in silence, his mind calculating. They had frozen the potatoes for 5 nights, then used Baal's meteoric crush to shatter them after allowing them to melt in the sun during the day. This process caused the poison to leak and evaporate. The cycle was freeze, melt, crush, evaporate, a method to purge the toxins. After repeating this process, the potatoes would be lightly cooked, transforming them into chunos, the wild, dehydrated potatoes once consumed by starving Andeans. He turned to the fertilizer crew and raised his voice, "It's snack time. Line up. Let's see if you'll enjoy it." The tired workers assembled quickly. Jiang Cho informed them that food was still scarce, so each demon would only receive 2 pieces. Zephyros, curious as ever, asked, "Why not make more?" "We've got wild potatoes everywhere." The Demon King responded with his usual ominous grin, "There aren't nearly enough to feed the entire demonic army. That's why we need to plant the rest. Grow them. Harvest 1,000 times more." The lower demons looked uncertain. Many held the chunos in their hands, eyes filled with suspicion. "Can we really eat this?" one asked. "It's poison. My cousin died eating this stuff." Drock stepped forward. The Demon King made them edible. "My daughter, Flute, ate one. She's just fine." But the others weren't so easily convinced. "Are you blind?" another demon hissed. "Look at his face. That's not a face that gives gifts. He probably wants us all to drop dead." Frustrated, Drock didn't argue. He simply threw the potato into his mouth. "Have you lost your mind?" the others cried. But Drock swallowed, tears in his eyes. Long live the Demon King! Inspired by his conviction, the agriculture squad stopped hesitating. They devoured the chunos one after another. Then they turned to Jiang Cho and began to cheer. "Yes, Kratos!" It was the official salute for the Demon King. He frowned. "I've always hated that chant," he muttered. "I really need to change that." Watching from nearby, his loyal servant observed the Demon King's expression. It was calm, but unwavering. He truly believed he could bring food to barren land. And now, even the servant began to believe that Jiang Cho might actually end hunger in the demon realm. Suddenly, the system flashed before his eyes. System notification, part of the demonic army is happy to be fed. Happiness points plus 50 total points, 51. Jiang Cho was stunned. That was a lot more than he expected. "A decent haul," he muttered, pleased. "I can probably use this to boost my stats," but then he paused. He wasn't sure which attribute would help him most. Perhaps it was better to save the points for now and keep accumulating. Turning back to the fields, he reflected it was time to separate the squads, one for fertilizer, another for potato harvesting. The scale of work was too vast for just one group to handle. Before he could even speak, Zephyros took initiative. He shouted to the agricultural squad, after work, "Go tell everyone in the village that even infertile land has now yielded food. And from now on, any demon who helps harvest wild potatoes will receive food coupons, redeemable for tunos." Jiang Cho raised an eyebrow. He's annoying, but I have to admit, he's smart and useful. The demon sprang into action, searching for wild potatoes with renewed energy. Even the generals assisted. But things weren't going as smoothly for everyone. In the distance, the demon Asura groaned in agony. Per the Demon King's orders, he had been carried to a specific location and hung up like a sacrificial scarecrow. Only then did his true role begin. Using his unique powers, his body ignited in flames, producing nitrogen essential for the soil. His suffering had purpose. He was now a living fertilizer machine. Time passed. Eventually, Jiang Cho nodded. "We've got enough fertilizer. Time for the next step." But he had a problem. The land was enormous. Too vast for the agriculture squad alone to handle. Meanwhile, the general hanging from the cross weakly whispered, "Just kill me already." The Demon King answered with a strike to the gut. "A starving general still works fine. I need you to hold out a little longer." Still, he sighed. There was a limit to what he could accomplish with brute force and minimal manpower. Begrudgingly, he returned to the capital. There, he turned to his servant. "Tell me, did you request reinforcements from the Star Masters?" The Demon King's servant responded affirmatively. "Yes, Your Majesty. The Star Masters have halted all military operations, reallocating their resources to assist in agricultural work. I sent messengers to all 4-star zones, but none have responded." Jiang Cho frowned. Did they fall to hunger on the way? It was a grim thought, but entirely possible. Without additional troops, spreading fertilizer across the vast lands would be nearly impossible with their current manpower. Meanwhile, in a distant region known as the Precipice of the Dead, located within the 1st-star area under the Demon King's territory, a report was being delivered to a powerful demon. According to the century-old records, a servant explained, Lord Kratos has actually started cultivating the land. He even managed to grow edible crops. The demon sat in silence, then let out a long breath. "So, he's afraid of me." This man was Swal, 1st-star master and father of the dead. A being who drew strength from the demise of others. The more demons that perished, the stronger he became. Jiang Cho, by ending war and hunger, was weakening Swal. That coward, Swal sneered. He's keeping his army alive to keep me powerless. Then, his gaze sharpened. "Have you dealt with the messengers I warned you about?" The elite demon at his side nodded. "Yes, Lord." None of the other Star Masters received word of the war's end or the farming operations. Swal was satisfied. "Good. The more demons starve, the better. Eventually, Kratos will fall, and I will rise in his place." He turned to another subordinate. "Fikimir, go. Destroy everything tied to Kratos' harvest." Fikimir gave a sinister smile. "It will be done." Back at the chasm, General Ashura remained suspended from the Great Cross, still burning to produce nitrogen. Fikimir passed by and glanced at him with mock pity. "So, Kratos turned you into a living corpse. Hey," he mused. "That's cold." But Lord Swal admires that kind of brutality. Then he added, "Don't worry. He'll take you in after we're finished destroying Kratos." With a wave of his hand, he activated his Spectre army, ghostly figures bound to his command. "Burn the land. Make sure it can never grow anything again." The Spectres howled as they rushed into action. One of them pointed out that what they were standing on was nothing but animal manure, recently spread. Fikimir grinned. "Then spread it, thoroughly. Mix it into the soil so completely that no one can recover it. Make it useless." His Spectres obeyed, flinging manure across the field, ensuring it was mixed deep into the earth. Their goal, destroy any chance of cultivation. Watching from his perch, Ashura's eyes widened. He recognized this tactic. The Demon King had once said that grinding and mixing fertilizer deep into the soil was the most effective method, but that it required enormous effort and labor. It was, ironically, what his agriculture squad couldn't do alone. Now, in front of him, Fikimir's Spectres were doing it perfectly, believing they were destroying the field, when in reality, they were doing exactly what Kratos needed. Ashura's mind reeled. "Wait, what the hell are you trying to do here?" Meanwhile, the Spectres were working non-stop. One ghost paused to rest. This never ends, the others yelled at him, no slacking. If even a patch of land goes untouched, the Demon King might turn it into a farm. The resting ghost muttered, even number 2718 is working today, and that guy's the laziest of all. What's going on? Number 2718 looked back and smiled sheepishly. I don't know. But when I see how much we've done, I feel proud, like I've accomplished something. The others stared at him in disbelief, then burst out laughing. That's the dumbest thing we've ever heard. But even so, they continued working harder than ever. And then the sun rose. None of them had realized how long they had been working. Their bodies began to disintegrate in the light, unraveling into dust. They were dying. But strangely, there was no sorrow. They had labored harder than they ever had. They had been useful, and for a fleeting moment, they felt pride. Their final thoughts weren't of pain, but of productivity. As the blazing sun rose high over the wasteland, the last of the spectres vanished into ash. Their bodies, once eerie and menacing, were now nothing more than a memory on the wind. Fikimir stood silently. Tears welled in his eyes, not from weakness, but from a strange mix of regret and attachment. My spectres. May you at least find peace, he whispered, mourning their passing. But deep inside, his focus remained sharp. Now. I just want to see how Kratos will react to this. Meanwhile, within a dimly lit storage warehouse, Zephyros stood reporting to the Demon King. The harvest took longer than we expected, he admitted, brushing sweat from his brow, but we finally finished collecting all the wild potatoes. Kratos nodded. That's good news. But unfortunately, they're in a dormant state. He explained that the potatoes, having been harvested while in deep rest, didn't produce any seeds. They were effectively useless if planted. It's like a potato was sleeping peacefully underground. And someone yanked it out by the hair, he said with a smirk. The shock throws them into a kind of biological pause. Their internal clock just stops. He tapped a barrel, thinking aloud. This dormancy can be broken faster if they're kept at 4 degrees Celsius for 2 or 3 weeks, and then moved quickly to a warm, dark place. That triggers them to start growing again. An idea crossed his mind. Or maybe I could ask Sergi to imbue the potatoes with her cold energy to simulate the temperature shift instantly. But then he flinched. Sergi and Hartok, both of them were still fuming. The memory of their recent anger sent a chill down his spine. If I ask either of them right now, I'm dead. Both together? No way I'd survive that, so for now, he decided to hold off. The good part, he continued, is that we don't need to keep them cold for long. We can actually increase the storage temperature to around 23 degrees now, just as I ordered the soldier farmers to do earlier. With that, the operation moved into its next phase. Dormant potatoes, thousands of them, were carefully placed in controlled storage chambers, ready to awaken when the time was right. But the real question remained, would Kratos be able to maintain the pace of cultivation now that his enemies were acting from the shadows? Would you like me to continue with what happens next, possibly how Sergi or Hartok react, or how Swal and Fikimir respond after their sabotage attempt? Trying to stay productive, the Demon King decided to have the demons do some squats as a basic form of training. Unfortunately, their stamina was laughably low. They tired out almost instantly. It was a complete failure. Disappointed, he grew thoughtful and summoned Zephyros, deciding to inspect the farms instead. He needed to imbue the soil with nitrogen, at the very least. But the moment he arrived near the fields, where Ashura was still bound, he stopped dead in his tracks. The earth was completely overturned. The soil was chaotic, tossed about as if a storm had passed through. And worse yet, the stench was unbearable, spreading through the entire area. This was not a sign of readiness for cultivation. It was a miracle of confusion, and he couldn't make sense of what had happened. Hidden nearby, Fikimir stifled laughter, convinced that his sabotage was a complete success. I've completely ruined Kratos' farms, he grinned. This tactic was flawless. But his celebration was cut short when Biel appeared behind him like a shadow. I found a rat, he said flatly, dragging the stunned Fikimir straight to the Demon King. As soon as Jang Kyle saw the intruder, he narrowed his eyes. That's Fikimir, one of the top officers from the Cliff of the Dead, he muttered. He must have come here after hearing about reinforcements. He didn't wait for pleasantries. What are you doing here? He asked. Fikimir opened his mouth to respond, crack. A brutal punch landed squarely in his face, nearly knocking his teeth out. Zephyros flinched. Wait, why'd you hit him before he even answered? Jiang Kyle shrugged. When someone acts shady, a punch usually clears things up. Face swollen and blooded, Fikimir sneered. HMPH. I expected no less from the Demon King, but don't think I'll talk so easily. The response earned him another round of punishment. The MC began beating him like a corrupt officer would a career criminal. Blow after blow rained down until the Demon King himself sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. This is getting exhausting. At that moment, the system interface appeared before him, offering to spend attribute points. Seeing he had 51 points, he dumped 50 of them into resistance, raising it from 20% to 30%. With enhanced endurance, he went back to pummeling Fikimir for the rest of the afternoon. Finally, the demon couldn't take it anymore. Enough. I'll talk. I was ordered to destroy your farms to force your people to starve. Hearing this, the Demon King returned to the castle, deep in thought. It all made sense now. The one behind everything was Swal, Sarah Thu, the first Star Master and embodiment of death. The king understood immediately, the hungrier the demons become, the stronger Swal grows. Faiz remarked that this felt like a revolution. But if they could defeat Swal, it would be a turning point. The demons who opposed the farming expedition might finally understand and fall in line. But the MC was still frustrated. Even if they dealt with Swal, more pests would just keep showing up, ruining everything. Zephyros opened his mouth to explain how difficult defeating the boss would be, but Jiang Kyle cut him off. I know. That guy can turn into a ghost and move across the entire dead cliff. The whole map was like one giant game of hide-and-seek back in the day. He clenched his fists. If I can't chase them down, then I'll just have to flush them out of their nests. Meanwhile, near Ashura, Flute gazed up at him with quiet admiration. Thanks to your sacrifice, we finally have food, she said gently. But her gratitude backfired. Ashura's eyes widened with fury. Are you mocking me? How dare you, he roared, threatening her and her family for their stupidity. Terrified, Flute ran away as Ashura seethed. I swear, when I get out of here, I'll kill that damn Demon King with my own hands. But then, something caught his eye. On the horizon, a strange poster waved in the breeze. On it, a silly jingle played, Congratulations, second lightning rod of the office Tilda. People were singing and celebrating, cheering for the one who had helped them so much. Confused, Ashura tilted his head. What the hell is that scarecrow? For a moment, his heart stirred with hope. Maybe he was being replaced. Maybe he'd finally be freed. But reality was cruel. The MC soon arrived and placed a second scarecrow right next to him. Then, using his fire ability, he set both of them ablaze. Only then did Ashura realize he was no longer the sole lightning rod. Now, there would be two. The fire burned, and the sun dragged on. Elsewhere, Sir Ruth watched everything through a crystal ball, trembling with frustration. He turned away and shouted into the void. Get in here. We need to do something about this, now. Jiang Kyle didn't let up for even a moment. He kept mercilessly burning Fikimir, leaving the dog-like demon writhing in agony. The pain was so intense, even Fikimir's superior, watching from a distance, couldn't help but tear up. Each time the Demon King's flames struck, Fikimir screamed in pain, his voice hoarse with desperation. Please, stop, he begged. But then, something caught the MC's eye. From the corner of his vision, he spotted a creature clutching a crystal ball, hiding just off the battlefield. It looked exactly like a player spectating from behind the scenes of a game. The Demon King scowled. Swal was watching everything. This only fueled his rage further. If that bastard thought he could toy with his land and get away with it, he'd regret ever making the attempt. The sun beat down, its heat unrelenting. Still, Flute never stopped working. She was in the fields, tirelessly tending the soil with a small shovel. Nearby, Aurora noticed her effort and called out in disbelief. What the hell are you doing, kid? Flute looked up, a little sweaty but smiling. The Demon King, the four great generals, and even the adults are all working hard to protect these crops. I wanted to help too. Aurora couldn't help but laugh. You're just a low-level demon. That idiot next to me already plowed the whole thing. Go find something actually useful to do. But Flute simply beamed with gratitude. Thank you, Fikimir. Not only did you plow the field, but you also helped as a lightning rod. Fikemir wanted to deny it, but the little girl's innocent words left him stunned. Despite the insult, he found her kind of adorable. Aurora snorted, amused by his smugness. He plowed a tiny patch and thinks he's a hero. You really believe anything will grow in this dead land? These damn potatoes probably won't even sprout. Still, he added, but I heard if you heat the sprouts, they grow faster. Not that it matters, everyone's going to die anyway. Before he could finish, Flute was already running off into the orange fields, shouting, "Thank you for the tip." Ashura took a long breath and muttered, "That little girl, trying to help in this dump?" Kinda funny. Back at the castle, Zephyros turned to the MC. "Do you really think Swal is going to come all the way here to save that mutt?" "He has to know it's a trap." Jang Kyle shook his head. "Of course not. He'll send some minions first to test the waters. That's why we'll wipe them out, every last one. No one leaves alive. Only then will Swal be forced to appear right where we want him." As the army readied for battle, a vulture carrying a crystal ball soared above them. Swal observed everything from his skybox, chuckling. What an idiot. As if that sorry excuse of an army could take down my elite troops. Still, I do feel bad for Fikemir. But his plan wasn't about rescue. It was annihilation. His true goal was to destroy the plantation completely. To do that, he sent in more of his elite, the harvest spirits. The monsters surged toward the field, receiving one simple command: crush every potato. They made their way into the warehouse where the harvested goods were stored. But as they entered, the Demon King stood waiting. "I knew you'd come," he said coldly, eyes glowing. "Welcome to your graveyard." The spirits froze. The MC remembered these monsters well from the game. They were a nightmare. These weren't normal mobs. They were Swal's second elite legion, infamous for clinging like ticks, draining life force, stealing abilities mid-battle. They were even more broken than the worst enemies in Dark Souls. But he had a plan. "You little parasites think you're clever," he shouted. "Let's see who wants to be the first to become a memory." There was only one way to beat them: lightning. The spirit sensed the trap and shouted, "Retreat!" "It's a trap." But the Demon King's grin widened. "You're just in time." They noticed a strange red stain near the door. One of the spirits whispered, "Is that blood?" Yes. His own blood spread all over the floor throughout the night. He activated Kratos' second phase technique, channeling lightning through the blood-soaked soil. The warehouse exploded in crackling bolts, frying the spirits on the spot. "They're vulnerable now," the MC roared. "Launch the agriculture unit." Suddenly, a horde of low-level demons, thin, awkward, and ragged, charged into the fray. Jang Kyle watched them, amused. They look like dry twigs, but they're endgame monsters. And sure enough, the demons tore the spirits apart. The battlefield erupted in cheers. Victory was theirs. The MC stood proudly atop a pile of potatoes, feeling something unfamiliar. Power. He felt like an alpha demon king, merciless, brilliant, and terrifying. In this world, he was a genius. But then, he noticed something odd. Some spirits hadn't been completely fried. He jumped down and eliminated the stragglers himself, one by one. Then, without warning, Flute appeared in the middle of the battlefield, standing atop the pile. The MC was stunned. When had she gotten there? One of the spirits noticed her too, and charged. She was a sitting duck. Her father screamed in terror, shouting for her to run. The MC scowled. "There's always something slowing me down." He knew he could use the lightning attack again, but it might not reach in time. So, he acted on instinct. He threw a potato. Yes, a potato. It soared through the air and hit the monster in the head. He blinked in disbelief. "What? Why did I just throw that?" Then, something strange happened. The potato began draining the monster's life force. A red aura formed around it, and sprouts emerged from its surface. The spirit collapsed. The potato rolled gently back into the pile. The remaining harvest spirits began to flee in panic. Meanwhile, the Demon King, still stunned, stood motionless, trying to process what had just occurred. Somehow, a sprout had emerged from the very potato he had thrown. Then it clicked. The harvest spirits had accelerated the natural aging process, reactivating the potato's biological clock, which had been frozen until now. With that realization, he grabbed Flute by the hand, let out a devilish laugh, and praised her efforts. From her perspective, However, this was utterly terrifying. His expression, his aura, it was all so intense that she nearly fainted from fear. But the Demon King didn't have time to ease up. He turned and shouted to his agricultural troops, commanding them to abandon the original plan of luring Sewall. Holding up a single potato like a declaration of war, he declared that it would be more advantageous to launch a full-scale invasion instead. The next day, under the same blistering sun, Azura awoke disoriented yet again. He blinked against the light, wondering who he even was and why, despite everything, he was still alive. The sun looked beautiful, and strangely, he felt grateful to still be facing it. But his stomach soon growled, an undeniable reminder of his will to live. Just then, someone called out to him. It was Flute. She joyfully told him that the trick he had shared about potato sprouts had actually worked, and as a result, she'd even received a handful of tunos as a reward. She explained how the Demon King had recruited a full agricultural battalion and attempted to make the potatoes sprout. However, the general had other ideas. Upon seeing the food, he screamed like a maniac, shaking his head wildly in excitement. Flute asked if he was truly that hungry and decided to offer a little bit. Her first throw landed right in his eye. He yelled, cursing the direction. She apologized and tried again, only to hit his other eye this time. One grain even flew into his mouth. He swallowed it immediately, admitting it tasted delicious. A notification popped up in front of the Demon King. Part of the demon army is happy after eating. 1 happiness point added. Current total, 302. He stared at the alert, confused as to where these points had come from. He suspected the brat had something to do with it, but couldn't quite identify the second person who had eaten. No matter. He smiled anyway. Points were points, and he needed every last one if he was to fight Sewall. Without hesitation, he commanded the agricultural troop to advance. They eventually arrived at a massive fortress with an enormous rope bridge suspended in front of it. The harvest spirits were already waiting and began cutting the ropes while laughing maniacally, eager to see the invaders fall. The rope snapped, and the Demon King jumped. But he didn't make it across. The spirits howled with laughter, calling him a fool for falling right into their trap. But when they looked down, what they saw left them speechless. The Demon King was somehow inside the mountain, completely naked. Using a familiar exploit, he repeatedly removed and re-equipped his clothes, allowing him to scale the mountain and reach the top. The spirits, terrified, couldn't comprehend what they had just witnessed. The Demon King pointed to the generals, confirming that the plan was unfolding as expected. He began walking forward, knowing the spirits feared the potatoes. Still, they mocked him for being alone and potato-less. But that's when he gave the signal. The harvest spirits moved in as instructed, and the Demon King activated his ultimate tactic, the quantum jump glitch. He phased through the wall, naked again, then disappeared. The spirits panicked. They didn't understand how the Demon King could traverse walls or move in such unnatural ways. But he kept going, exploiting every inch of the game map he had mastered over the course of 19 full playthroughs. He arrived at the heart of the fortress, where the spirits had gathered in one spot. They assumed the Demon King must be exhausted. But with a wicked grin, he declared they were wrong. At that moment, he wasn't the Demon King anymore, he was a veteran player. Zaphorus then shouted the order. The agricultural demons began launching potatoes at the spirits. Each impact triggered germination, turning the spirits red. The MC opened his arms wide and declared, "I am a farmer." Zaphorus watched in awe. He had doubted the plan at first, but just as the Demon King had predicted, it was all coming together. He recalled the earlier plan, lure the spirits into an abandoned irrigation canal, a dead end, seemingly irrelevant. But the Demon King had known better. That area had always seemed suspiciously well designed during his previous playthroughs, despite having no purpose. One day, he'd attacked the oddly textured wall there and uncovered a hidden path. That passage led directly to the corridor where the first boss fight against Sewall took place. He had assumed it was only accessible after beating the game, but now it was his secret weapon. In that place, he had once found the Elixir of Metamorphosis, an item containing the compressed souls of countless corpses. It could only be consumed once, and its effects were unknown. But now, none of that mattered. His army celebrated. The potatoes had sprouted. All that remained was planting. Jurak wept with joy, proclaiming that he and his daughter could finally live with full bellies. The MC's expression changed. He remembered his grandmother telling him he must be starving. He remembered everyone promising a hearty dinner, and the ambulance that had taken her away. That memory darkened his gaze. He swore then and there anyone who got in the way of his peaceful meal would pay with their life. Suddenly, the general stepped forward, claiming he was strong and could help. But the Demon King calmly told him to carry the potatoes instead. As king, he would take care of the rest himself. Meanwhile, the Stellar Master was channeling immense energy into the Grand Heart of Ice. He declared that with its supreme freezing power, he could capture more tormented spirits and summon even more powerful soldiers. The Demon King appeared, kicking him square in the head before he even noticed. Sewall, infuriated, demanded to know how he had been found. But the MC, wearing a sinister grin, replied that none of that mattered. It was time to fight. Sewall laughed at him, calling him a fool for thinking he could win alone. He began dematerializing, preparing to unleash his full power. But the Demon King wasn't fazed. He had fought Sewall not once, not twice, but 19 times before. He had hunted this boss across every cursed cliff and through every maze of henchmen. He knew Sewall always retreated to the Heart of Ice, a relic crafted by an ancient dragon, powerful enough to freeze even souls and tether the dead to the living world. In past playthroughs, Sewall had used that power to create legions, until the Paladin arrived and the final battle began. The Demon King had seen it all. He was bored of that pattern. Now, Sewall completed his transformation, taking on the exact appearance of the Demon King. It was the boss's ultimate skill, copy all abilities and attributes of the target. But the MC smirked. He remembered how, at the end of the campaign, his character had been a god, stats maxed out, with strength and dodge rates off the charts. One mistake, and it was game over. This time, though, he was just Kratos, with average stats. Nothing special to copy. Sewall launched the first attack, and only then did the system activate, offering to convert happiness points into attributes. He checked his status, stamina, 30% mental strength, 20% physical strength, 20% dexterity, 20% magic power, 20% happiness points, 302. He spent 50 happiness points to boost dexterity to 30%. In that moment, he dodged the attack and punched Sewall hard in the gut. Sewall reeled, stunned by the power. Still thinking it was luck, the boss attacked again. But the Demon King used another 50 points to raise his strength to 30% and met the next attack head-on. Both punches collided. And this time, it was clear. The Demon King had the upper hand. Just as the attack lands, it isn't the Demon King who suffers the blow, it's the boss. He lets out a blood-curdling scream of pain, demanding to know why the Demon King remains unaffected. Calmly, the Demon King replies, "You've got to use your head. Planting requires brains." Sue, enraged by the insult, decides to unleash a devastating move, one he had copied from the Demon King himself. Without hesitation, he sacrifices another 50 points, boosting his magical power and mental strength to 30% each. Their abilities clash with immense force, but it's immediately clear who holds the upper hand. Sue's power falters, and the boss lets out a scream of terror as he is overwhelmed. The attack hits him dead-on, electrocuting him so thoroughly that his body melts into a gelatinous puddle, nothing more than a lifeless slime on the ground. The system then issues a notification. It confirms that the points were distributed evenly across all attributes. All 5 core attributes are now at 30%, and with this, the growth mission, to elevate all stats, has been completed successfully. As a reward, a new skill is unlocked, summoning the Farmer's Throne, which requires 100 happiness points to activate. This throne, belonging to the Farmer King, comes fully equipped with durable and formidable agricultural tools. Yank, still stunned by this sudden development, realizes how desperately he had needed something new to change the tide. But just as peace seems possible, a voice rises from the puddle. Sue, now reduced to slime, screams out to the Demon King, asking if he truly believes this is the end. The Demon King, unfazed, replies with an amused smirk. There's always a second phase in the final stretch. And just like that, the boss transforms again, this time into his true form, invoking the ancient and malevolent power of the evil dragon. The Demon King is taken aback, acknowledging that seeing it in person is far more overwhelming than expected. The dragon's attack power and HP bar are no joke. Yet instead of backing down, the Demon King smiles. The final showdown is about to begin. Right on cue, the general and his army burst through the doors, fully prepared for battle. The Demon King, thrilled, asks the dragon if he's ready to face them. The dragon, gazing nervously at the incoming army, weakly suggests they talk things out. But it's far too late for diplomacy. The agricultural army charges forward with fury, shouting about how no one messes with their crops. Caught in the storm of their wrath, Su can only beg for mercy. From a distance, the Demon King watches the chaos and reflects that, perhaps, he could have won this fight alone, but something about taking a life with his own hands feels excessive. Even though the army has been fighting for an extended time, exhausted and starving, not a single one has fallen. They are still unbelievably strong. After the battle ends in victory, the Demon King activates the newly unlocked Farmer's Throne skill. The remaining happiness points drop to just 2. With a gesture, the throne is summoned. Tools rain down from the sky, crashing into the earth with such force that shockwaves ripple through the battlefield. Yang Chul stares in disbelief as the throne itself slams directly into Su, utterly annihilating him. The demons, drawn to this new skill, gather around it in awe. They erupt in cheers as the Demon King finishes off Su with a final, brutal blow, crushing his skull and ensuring he stays down for good. To them, it's a glorious and ruthless moment befitting their ruler. Though it wasn't his original plan, the Demon King steps forward and joins in the celebration, raising his voice in triumph. Far away, in the demon realm, Ashura remains crucified alongside Phicomea. Su's destruction sends a signal, his master is gone. One of the creatures sighs, murmuring that it's time to go to heaven. The battlefield has been cleared, and the pests threatening the harvest have been eradicated. Now, with the field ready, the potato sprouts begin to germinate. The Demon King, filled with excitement, shouts that it's finally time to plant. But just as he turns to leave, the heart of ice begins to tremble and emit noise. The system chimes in with an update. The mission to defeat Su at the Cliff of the Dead has been completed in 20 attempts. To his surprise, the Demon King learns that even the 19 previous victories he achieved in-game were counted. As a reward, a secret event is triggered. The heart of ice starts to shake violently. Smoke leaks from the crystal until it eventually bursts open. The Demon King cautiously approaches the mysterious object and sees a creature emerging from it. At first glance, he wonders if it's a dragon. The creature, looking at the Demon King, lets out a cute growl and steps forward. It looks up at him, confused, and wonders. "Is this my father?" The Demon King stretches out his arms and offers his hand. The creature recalls hatching in darkness, frightened and alone, and believes, at long last, that its father has come to find it. Yet as it stares into the Demon King's face, a wave of fear washes over it. Everyone begins to march back to the Demon Kingdom. The baby dragon, noticing their predatory glances, becomes nervous. Something feels off. The Demon King then yells at his soldiers, scolding them. "Are you all idiots? Let it grow first. More meat that way." The dragon begins to cry, now convinced that its so-called father intends to eat it one day. Back in the kingdom, Yang Chul notices children joyfully greeting their returning parents. Demons all around celebrate the king's return. The warmth of the reunion is almost overwhelming, and the dragon, watching it all, starts to believe that maybe these creatures aren't so scary after all. But one glance back at the Demon King's face, and the terror returns. Inside the castle, the baby dragon sits huddled in a corner, trembling. It dares to look back again, and sees that same terrifying expression on the Demon King's face. The fear deepens. He's more certain than ever, they're waiting for him to grow fat and ripe, so they can feast. Meanwhile, the Demon King has a different kind of concern. He has absolutely no idea what to feed the baby. He scratches his head, muttering, "Do baby dragons even eat lapidated yolk or something?" Just then, Zephyrus approached with a disgruntled expression and said, "As I predicted, I am having trouble forming the garden beds." The Demon King wasn't surprised, he had already anticipated this issue. To plant, they needed raised mounds of soft soil between the crops or along the edges of cultivated plots. The problem? The ground was hard as stone. The agricultural troop struggled in frustration. One member muttered, "Is this even soil? It looks more like a quarry." Another snapped his pickaxe mid-swing and cried out in exasperation. The baby dragon watched this scene unfold with increasing concern. To him, it looked like forced labor, and he feared he would be next. Yang Chul surveyed the situation grimly. The place resembled a mine more than a field, and he realized that at this rate, clearing the stones would take an eternity. Worse still, if they kept working the agricultural troop day and night, the tunos they'd prepared as incentives would quickly run out. Even if they got reinforcements from other lords, it wouldn't be enough. Frustrated, he wished he were the protagonist of some other manga, maybe one where he could summon magical beasts. He imagined calling forth a giant wombat to clear the field with ease. But that was just a fantasy. Looking over his shoulder, he saw Flute hard at work, giving her all despite the conditions. Inspired, Jiang Qil scolded himself for whining. This was what real agriculture looked like. Back-breaking work. Real struggle. And he needed to find a solution, not an excuse. Suddenly, a shout echoed across the field, "Blade Gale!" It caught him off guard. He turned toward the horizon and saw a massive hurricane forming and racing toward them. His face twisted with rage and dread. He had completely forgotten Blade Gale was a random event that could occur in the desert. And if it caught anyone in its path, they'd be shredded like sashimi in seconds. Without hesitation, he shouted, "Take cover! Hide behind the rocks!" The agricultural troops scattered, fleeing toward shelter. Jiang Qil ran with them, muttering curses. Even though the hurricane was still far off, the wind pressure alone was monstrous. He realized then that no game, no simulation, could compare to the sheer terror of real-life natural disasters. In farming, nature itself was often the greatest enemy. But as everyone ran to safety, Flute suddenly turned back. He blinked, confused. What is she doing? She ran straight toward Acura, who stood frozen in the hurricane's path. Her father screamed after her in panic. But before he could move, the Demon King handed him the baby dragon and said, "Take care of him. Do not follow me. Anyone who disobeys will be punished." Bale, watching in disbelief, cried out, "Your Majesty, don't do it. It's too dangerous." But the Demon King already knew the risks. He was willing to lose almost anything, but not Flute. She was one of his best assistants. His favorite lightning rod. And he knew better than anyone that agriculture was never a fairy tale where you picked apples while smiling under the sunset. This was survival. This was war. Flute reached the cross where Ashura was bound and desperately tried to untie the knot. Ashura, pinned and helpless, yelled at her, "Get out of here. I can't do anything about this." The hurricane howled closer. So did the Demon King. Holding a seed in one hand, he shouted, "Flute! Get out of the way!" Then, with a flying kick, he shattered the wooden cross. Ashura crashed face first into the ground. But it was already too late. The hurricane's outer blades began to slice through the air, cutting into both the Demon King and Flute. Despite the pain, she continued to untie the knot with bleeding fingers. The Demon King shouted at her, "You idiot! That knot was designed to restrain the four generals. You can't undo it. Run!" At that moment, Flute's body was yanked away. Jiangchu had arrived. Fighting against the wind, he pulled both her and the cross to safety. The baby dragon watched from afar, unsure what to make of it all. He could feel the sheer force of the hurricane and questioned how strong his father really was. But even so, he saw the Demon King struggling, running forward, enduring everything. The dragon screamed, his voice thin against the roar of the wind. Then, with all his might, he broke free of the grasp holding him and took flight. What little he had seen was enough. This creature was good. His father was kind. With a powerful flap of his wings, the baby dragon soared into the storm. Taking a deep breath, he released his ice ability straight into the heart of the Blade Gale. Jiangchu, his body already battered and torn, noticed the change. The wind was weakening. He looked up and realized what had happened. The little dragon had used cold to disrupt the storm's upward air current. But he also knew such a feat was too much for such a small creature. The wind began to spiral violently again, and hope started to fade. Then, just in time, Izafairos, Baal, and Drok arrived and pulled everyone out of danger. Back at the castle, the Demon King lay unconscious in bed. As the room quieted, the generals slowly approached with dark expressions. Hardtok, glaring down at his sleeping lord, sneered and muttered, "Finally, the Demon King sleeps. Now, I'll cut off his head." Sergei agreed to the plan, warning that after they dealt with the other two fools, one of them would inevitably become the next Demon King. For now, they would remain allies. With that settled, the two opened the door and entered the Demon King's chamber. They marched directly toward the bed, weapons ready to strike. But they stopped mid-step. Lying there was the Demon King, eyes wide open, wearing a terrifying expression, as though he had been expecting them all along. The sight froze them in place, but they pressed forward. This was their only chance. Suddenly, Baal and Akira entered the room, their expressions calm but firm. Baal, the towering brute, asked what the two thought they were doing. He warned them that the demon lord was sleeping peacefully and shouldn't be disturbed. With a dry chuckle, he added that the demon king's face while asleep was already scary enough to justify his title, even without being awake. Then, his tone sharpened. If they disrupted the demon lord's rest, they would live to regret it. The one with the monocle scoffed, claiming he understood why the musclehead might say that, but then turned to Ashura, asking if he seriously intended to ally with a demon king obsessed with farming. Ashura answered without enthusiasm, admitting he wasn't exactly thrilled either. But he owed the demon king his life, and this was just him repaying that debt. Heartoak snapped, asking if Ashura hadn't realized yet that this whole potato farming business was only bringing them problems. Not only was it ineffective, it could even lead to mass starvation. Didn't that bother him? Ashura answered without hesitation. That's just how things were. He recalled Little Flute working herself to exhaustion despite being so young. And because of that, he said with conviction, if they wanted to survive, they would have to risk their lives. Fighting was still his preferred method, of course, that was just who he was. The man with the monocle warned that they'd regret their choice, then left the room with Sergei. A moment later, a sound stirred from the bed. The demon lord had awakened. Still groggy, the MC muttered Ashura's name. Ashura asked if he had overheard everything, quickly clarifying that he wasn't siding with anyone, he was just doing what he owed, that's all. But Jiang Chu rose with a terrifying glare and growled, "What the hell are you doing talking in my room?" Ashura was confused until it was too late. A single bloody punch landed so violently that the shockwave could be seen from outside the castle. Soon after, they stepped outside. Baal carried a bruised and battered Ashura on his back, while the Demon King, now fully awake, declared they had no time to waste. Everyone needed to get back to clearing the land. Baal informed him that the stones were already gone. Zephyros had taken care of it. The Demon King, confused, looked around until he spotted Zephyros giving orders to the farming troops. He approached and asked his subordinate where all the stones had gone. Zephyros simply pointed in one direction, saying, "He's with a certain animal." The Demon King squinted into the distance. "Tiboni?" he asked. Sure enough, the baby dragon was flying across the field, carrying as many stones as his small body could hold in his mouth. Then he'd fly back to grab more. The little dragon knew he wasn't strong enough to protect his father from the cutting wind yet, but he had made up his mind he would eat a lot and grow fast. Hearing his father's call, the baby dragon flew toward him. The Demon King, trying to look excited despite the fearsome expression on his face, welcomed his son warmly. He reflected that while the blade gales didn't appear often, they might have a way to counter them. If his baby dragon could keep an eye on the sky and release cold air at the right moment, they might be able to stop future hurricanes. It was risky, but the alternative was worse. Zephyros then reported that the stockpile of tuna rewards was running low and asked if they should produce more. The Demon King shook his head. "No need," he said calmly. His mind was already elsewhere. He reflected that in farming, the first enemy was nature. The second was cost. And they had to find a way through both. Meanwhile, inside the castle, Sergei was resting in her room. She finally removed her helmet, revealing a stunning blonde woman underneath. As she shook out her hair, she sighed in frustration. Even after days away from the fields, the stench of manure still clung to her. Then, someone knocked on her door. The Demon King's voice called out, "We need to talk." Startled, she muttered to herself, it was the first time he had ever come to her room. "What do you want?" she asked aloud. "There's nothing to talk about. I really need your help," he insisted. "Please open the door." Sergei frowned and shouted back, "Leave. We have nothing to discuss." But instead of leaving, the Demon King stepped inside, almost naked. Sergei screamed in disbelief, "Are you insane? You can't just walk into a woman's room like that." But then, he dropped to his knees. Completely flustered, Sergei asked, "What the hell are you doing now?" The Demon King bowed low and said, "Without you, I can't do anything." She stood there, red-faced and stunned, completely unable to make sense of the situation. Jiang Chu, for his part, thought to himself that if he needed to save costs, he was even willing to kneel before someone. He needed her blade, her precision, now more than ever. Sergei, still burning with embarrassment, eventually agreed. "If you need me that badly, I'm willing to listen." Jiang Chu was stunned by the shift in her attitude. But he wasted no time and led her to the warehouse. They stood before a massive pile of potatoes. Calmly, he said, I need you to cut them. Each one needs to be halved before planting. Sergei blinked. Her eyes widened. And then the realization hit her. She'd been tricked. Furious, she exploded, unleashing a storm of curses upon the Demon King. He tried to explain the details, that the task was simple. Just don't cut potatoes with fewer than 3 sprouts. But if there were 4 or more, then it was safe. She didn't want to hear it. But the Demon King just stood there, determined. This, too, was war. The Demon Lord emphasized one more thing: when cutting the potatoes, the number of sprouts on each side must be equal. That balance was crucial. After delivering the instructions, he picked up a few potatoes and warned, I'm going to throw them now. Sergei raised an eyebrow. I never said I'd do it. But it was already too late. He tossed the potatoes at her. Reflexes taking over, Sergei swiftly drew her blade. With flawless grace and absurd precision, she sliced each potato cleanly in half, midair. The Demon Lord was left stunned. He carefully inspected the halves, one by one, unable to believe the accuracy. How? How did you do this with such precision? He asked in awe. Then, with a slight smile, he added, I always knew you were the only one who could do this. Sergei narrowed her eyes. She wasn't going to fall for this sweet talk. Save it. You're still a lying scammer. But before she could continue, the Demon Lord stood up. A powerful aura surrounded him as he slowly approached her. Then, without warning, he took out a cloth and started cleaning his sword until it gleamed. Sergei, now flustered, asked, what are you doing? Some potato juice got on it, he replied calmly. It has to be cleaned properly. Sergei, heart pounding, questioned whether the red-cloaked demon had completely lost his mind. His expression was sincere, warm, even. That confused her more than anything. The Demon Lord looked at the polished blade and nodded to himself. Feels good when it's clean. If the knife isn't cleaned properly, it could carry diseases to the potatoes. So we need to be careful. Then he looked back at her, his eyes gentle. Please, help me. You're the only one who can do this. Inwardly, he knew it was true. Sergei was the only demon capable of slicing potatoes and organizing the Chuno storage efficiently. Still flustered, Sergei sighed and finally agreed. All right. Just this time. Quietly, she called him silly under her breath. The Demon Lord was thrilled. I'll get some boiled water and cloth. We'll spend the night cutting together. Sergei blinked. Why are you so excited over this? Again, she muttered, what a silly demon, and so, the two continued slicing all the potatoes late into the night. Not far away, Hardtop watched them silently, seeing how in sync they were. His expression turned bitter. TCH, he muttered. Another fool charmed just because she heard a few compliments. Meanwhile, under the scorching sun, Ashura was still tied to the punishment cross. Sweat dripping down, he stared blankly at the sky. What even is living, he wondered aloud. What drives a lightning rod to keep going? Nothing about this life is worth it. Just then, Little Flute approached. The elders saved some Chunos for you. Let's play the throwing game. Ashura, gritting his teeth, snapped, You really think a mighty general like me would play some peasant game with a brat like you? Get any closer and I'll eat you alive. But Flute tossed the Chuno anyway, and it landed directly in his mouth. Furious, he screamed, Do you even know how to throw? If you're going to do it right. From a distance, the monocled demon observed the scene and sighed. Ashura, he thought, had clearly lost his mind. Too many head injuries had rendered him incapable of rational thought. But he didn't have time to dwell on it. Someone was shouting. It was the Demon Lord, announcing that it was finally time to plant the potatoes in the field. Hardtop crossed his arms. I never expected anything from him anyway, he muttered. Just then, Sergei received unexpected attention from the agricultural troops. They bowed and thanked her profusely for slicing all the seed potatoes. She looked away, embarrassed. I didn't cut them for you, okay? From the side, the monocled demon narrowed his eyes. What's with that expression, he muttered. That's not how a proud demon general should look. He glanced toward the lower demons who were crying, yes, crying, out of emotion over the potato seeds. Disgusted, he asked if they had any shame at all. They're all hopeless fools, he thought coldly. But no matter. Soon, the greatest intellect of the demon race shall claim the Demon Lord's throne. Back in the field, the Demon Lord gave further instructions. Keep planting. Soon the sprouts will emerge and break through the soil. When they do, we begin cutting the sprouts. Bal, flexing his muscles, chimed in proudly, I'm good at cutting. Shut up, the Demon Lord snapped. He turned to everyone else. Each seed can grow between 3 to 6 sprouts. Now, tell me, what's better, more sprouts or fewer? Naturally, the demons answered, more. But the Demon Lord shook his head. Wrong. Fewer is better. They looked at him in confusion. How can fewer be better? That doesn't make sense. More is always better, right? At that moment, Hardtalk, who had been watching silently, couldn't take it anymore. You're all bloody idiots. He stepped forward and barked, use your heads for once. If there are too many sprouts, they'll compete for nutrients. The potato itself will be weaker. Jiangchu, who had overheard from a distance, raised an eyebrow in surprise. Wait, how do you know that? Have you farmed before? Hardtalk scoffed. You really need to learn something so basic? Of course the sprouts and the potato share the same nutrients. That's just common sense. The Demon Lord looked to the group and asked, so, how many sprouts would be ideal? Hardtalk didn't hesitate. The obvious answer is 2, he said. But, thinking practically, 1 would be better. Though, if that one breaks the root, the whole potato might die. He went further, suggesting that healthy soil could be created artificially by tilling the land for better air circulation and adding fertilizer. The entire group was left stunned by the clarity and depth of his explanation. And it's not just the potatoes, he continued. We'd steal nutrients too. They'll have to be removed. The Demon Lord was left speechless. Then, unable to contain himself, he shouted, Everyone, give him a round of applause. We have a genius in the army. The field erupted with cheers. Genius! 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 Hardtalk clenched his jaw. The chants rang in his ears, stressing him out. Yet, as the voices grew louder, a distant memory surfaced, his mother's voice, calling him stupid. His face twisted with emotion as he turned away, quietly wiping the tears he didn't understand himself. The Demon Lord approached, smiling. You're wise. From now on, I name you commander of the farming battalion. Hardtalk was stunned. Ridiculous, he thought. My intellect exists to conquer, to outsmart other races, not farm. But before he could respond, Jiang Cole raised his voice, rallying everyone. Show respect. He's one of the elites of the demon race. The soldiers picked up the chant again, shouting, Elite of the elite. Hardtalk, both furious and flustered, sneered inwardly. Fools. All of them are beneath me. But still, with poise and command, he straightened his back and barked, Follow me. He planned to lead for only a short while. But the cheers never stopped, and the celebration continued. Just then, a notification appeared before the Demon Lord, psychological battle, victory achieved. He tilted his head in confusion. What psychological battle? Another notification followed. You witnessed Bahal's neglected childhood and turned him into a loyal subordinate. The Demon Lord blinked, wondering if he had really done that without realizing it. Then came yet another message. Ashura, who never had a friend, has gained a companion. Violence has decreased. The Demon Lord frowned. Companion? Who? But it didn't stop there. Sergei, whose heart had never been touched, began to melt. You earned the trust of a soul that only wanted recognition. 200 happiness points obtained. New skill unlocked, blood vision. His eyes widened. Blood vision? He had never seen that skill in the game. It must be original, just like the farmer's throne. The system elaborated, blood vision allows you to see the near future of your target, up to 6 hours. Targets may include living beings or objects. And then, the real surprise, bonus effect, even the sky can be targeted. His jaw dropped. That's a weather forecast. He could barely contain his excitement. Far from the demonic lands, between exile and civilization, in a forgotten village along the border, a man named Ray stood once more. He declared himself fully recovered. One of his comrades smiled. It's a relief to see you well. Ray gave a tired chuckle. Next life, I hope for a stronger body. Dial, standing beside him, grinned. Next life, I want to be rich. A noble who bosses people around. They both laughed. Ray then turned to a quiet figure. Kim Kai, we plan to return to the kingdom. Want to come with us? Kim Kai, face serious, hesitated. I still don't know. I told you before, I don't even remember who I really am. He looked down. I've never lived among humans. When I first came to this village, the people didn't welcome me. So, would someone like me really be accepted anywhere? The two warriors exchanged glances, unsure of how to answer. Ray tried to lighten the moment. Maybe you could start by wearing different clothes. But that was when Dial chimed in. Wait. Hero, do you really not want to take off those strange clothes? Kim Kai looked away, embarrassed. Deep down, he did want to change them. But no matter how hard he tried, they wouldn't come off. It was as if they were part of his body. Nearby, Rivage thanked a local for their hospitality. Living here just because you're descended from an exile. It's cruel. He promised that once he returned to the kingdom, he'd tell the king everything. Kim Kai watched him carefully. That man. He must be a noble. Maybe even someone scouting these lands under royal orders. But he's not arrogant. He's kind. Honest. Kim Kai couldn't help but wonder, who was I, really? He only remembered following orders. Orders to kill. Over and over again. His gaze fell. Is that all I'm good for? Back in the demonic kingdom, the agricultural unit cried out with joy. The sprouts had finally begun to emerge from the soil. The generals approached, each visibly impressed by the sight. Flute rushed to Ashura with the news. They re-sprouting. It's working. Ashura's face contorted in rage. What the hell do I care? What am I supposed to do with that kind of news? Ignoring the outburst, the demon lord called out to the entire battalion. We're moving on to the next phase, burying. Then, with a grin, he turned to the genius himself. Hartok. Explain it to them. Hartok took the lead once again, explaining what the next stage, burying, actually meant. It involved covering the sprouting stems with soil to protect the young potatoes from direct sunlight. If the sunlight reached them, he warned, the potatoes would change color, lose their flavor, and potentially even become poisonous. They would then be labeled spoiled potatoes. Jiang Cole immediately applauded. Brilliant explanation, he shouted. Hartok blushed from embarrassment. Trying to distract himself, he looked up at the sky to check the weather. That was when he recalled something. He had invested 200 happiness points into a weather forecast skill. His newly evolved blood vision had a requirement, staring without blinking for 200 seconds. He focused. Seconds dragged on. His eyes began to burn, his face contorted like a lost stray dog. The lower demons noticed and, misinterpreting the sight, assumed their king was crying tears of joy over the newly grown sprouts. Finally, the skill activated. Blood vision activated, the system displayed the result, clear skies with dry weather for the next 6 hours. A perfect time to store away the humidifier. The demon lord nodded in satisfaction. Good, he said to Taboni. You'll finally sleep well tonight. No more windstorms. But the peace was short-lived. Zaphorus arrived urgently and delivered a report. A subordinate of the second Star Master has returned, he said. They immediately returned to the castle, where a demon named Lafla stepped forward to report. He had received word about the ceasefire and the agriculture reforms. However, he brought grim news. Rust, the third Star Master, had launched an attack. Claiming the Demon Lord had weakened, Rust sought to take his place. The Demon Lord frowned in frustration. Demons are always the same. Zephyro nodded. This could become serious. If Rust manages to defeat the second Star Master and they unite, we'll have trouble dealing with them. Jiang Cole added his thoughts. Even though they're low level, their numbers are overwhelming. The Demon Lord knew the situation was delicate. He needed to act before the second Star Master was defeated. But he couldn't abandon his agricultural project for long. The third Star Master had attacked a place known as the Subterranean Abyss of the Dead, also called the Swamp of Decay. On the game's map, this area was 10 times larger and much farther than it seemed in the real world. He traveled to the abandoned section opposite the castle, a place that, in the game, granted bonus effects. Yet here, it offered nothing. He paused, wondering how he could juggle both warfare and agriculture. Then a devilish grin crept onto his face. I'm the Demon King, he thought. A boss doesn't need to do things himself. With that in mind, he devised a plan. Sergei protested dramatically, claiming she wasn't doing this for him. Meanwhile, Bahal proudly swore he would obey the Demon Lord's command, no matter the cost. The Demon Lord made his decision. He would send 2 of his 4 celestial generals to the front lines. With their power and a group of elite demons, they could change the tide of battle. Fortunately, he knew that the boss's region had fully functional teleportation systems, including one that led straight to the Swamp of Decay. Satisfied, he ordered the long-range sprayer to be launched. If he and Hardtalk could concentrate on the main operations, everything would fall into place. Meanwhile, far away in the flaming ruins of the Second Kingdom, Planus, the Second Star Master, knelt to face his challenger. "How dare you commit treason against the Demon King?" he demanded. Standing opposite was none other than Ruster, the Third Star Master. He approached slowly, his tone cold. "This is rebellion," Ruster admitted. "But I had no choice. Ending the war will bring only ruin to our race." Planus clenched his fists. The Demon King promised fertile land. "We no longer need to fight humans for food." But Ruster shook his head. "That's not the problem. Fighting with courage is our honor." He raised his weapon, but before he could strike, something flew across the battlefield, smashing into his weapon and sending it flying. 2 of the celestial generals had arrived. Sergei stepped forward without hesitation. "You're right," she admitted. "We were born to fight. We love it." But she looked around the battlefield. How did it come to this? Why do we enjoy it so much? She sighed, a rare moment of vulnerability in her voice. "I finally understand. After seeing everything that's happened." Meanwhile, back in the village, Flute ran with pure joy on her face. Bursting into her home, she shouted, "Father! Come to the fields, quick!" They rushed back together. What they saw made them freeze in awe. The fields had flourished. The plantation was a radiant display of life and color. The lower demons were overcome with emotion. Even Ashura, normally so stoic, shed tears. From a distance, Hardtalk and Zephyros stood in silence, taking in the breathtaking scene. And at the center, the Demon Lord watched it all, his eyes locked on the fruit of his labor. The little girl ran toward him and exclaimed, "It's so beautiful. I've never seen anything like it." The Demon Lord remained silent, deeply moved. Back on the battlefield, Sergei charged at Ruster. Her blades danced around her, striking mercilessly. The distracted Ruster failed to react in time. He was caught by surprise, his body grabbed and immobilized. Sergei wasted no time. With her target pinned, she unleashed a relentless flurry of attacks. "Stop!" Ruster cried. "I never said I wanted to kill anyone. I came here to save lives." "What are you doing?" Sergei paused, just for a moment. "He's telling the truth." But she didn't stop. "Sometimes," she muttered, blade raised high, "you must finish one to save many." Ruster, beaten and confused, could barely get the words out. "That doesn't even make sense." Meanwhile, standing before Flute, the Demon King nodded, acknowledging their progress. "They finally started to grow," he said, observing the field. "And so many at once. Cut the useless flowers immediately." This order shocked the lower demons. Acura, unable to hold back, shouted furiously, "I will never forgive the Demon King for being so heartless." Hardtalk, however, smiled at the outburst. Even in this moment, the king remains the king, he thought, impressed. He turned to the others. "What are you all waiting for? Follow the order immediately." Despite their dismay, the agricultural troop obeyed. Drock crouched beside one of the flowers, gently touching its petals. "They look so sad," he whispered. Another demon spoke up in despair. "We worked so hard to grow them. I've never seen anything so beautiful in this land." But the general's patience wore thin. "Leave the flowers, and they'll steal all the nutrients from the potatoes," he warned. "We're not here to grow a flower garden, we're here to make the potatoes big, strong, and nutritious." With heavy hearts, the demons complied. The Demon King watched their struggle with amusement, excited by the word potato ringing in his ears. Soon after, the generals returned with news. Ruster had been captured. The Demon King looked at the broken enemy. "This is what you get for starting a rebellion," he declared coldly. "You destroyed everything I built, and I'll make sure you pay for it." The Star Master accompanying Ruster didn't hesitate. "Just finish it already," he said. "A demon who's lost his honor in battle deserves nothing but death." Without a second thought, the Demon King activated his ability, sending a blast toward Ruster, but the rebel laughed. That barely tickled, he sneered. His armor had absorbed the attack. Koss blinked in disbelief. Wait, he didn't take any damage. The Demon King simply nodded and led him to the plantation. There, he revealed a lightning rod he had recently installed. I found this job more useful than expected, he said, before using his skill again. This time, Ruster screamed in agony. Now that's more like it, the Demon King muttered. With his new lightning rod fully operational, he turned to his next concern. Someone get Ashura off the cross, he ordered. He's not recovering well, and it's time for retirement. They untied the weakened general. Flute, concerned, ran to help him, but stopped halfway, startled by his frightening face. Still seething, Ashura glared at her. That little demon girl humiliated me. I'll devour her first. Flute froze, paralyzed by the dark aura he was emitting. But just then, Ashura's legs gave out, and he collapsed face-first into the dirt. Damn it, it's been too long since I walked, he grumbled. Bhaal approached, gently picking him up in his arms. Put me down. Ashura yelled. What do you think you're doing? I'm not some princess to be carried like this. Unfazed, Bhaal tied him to his back. Orders from the Lord Demon, he explained. You'll stay like this for a while. The Prince of Darkness was humiliated beyond belief. He would never forget this shame.
From a distance, the Demon King observed everything. I was worried that crazy guy would lose control again, he muttered, but he had already checked the forecast with his foresight ability. 6 hours of consistent weather. That gave him confidence to let things play out. He pointed toward the field. Harvest day is approaching, he said to himself. Time to speed things up. Still, deep down, he was calm. With a super-fast weed cutter and a professional carrier, he was well equipped. Autumn harvest was not far off, but food supplies were running low, and though demons were used to hunger, he couldn't ignore how exhausted they had become. Just then, a familiar voice called out to him. It was Planus, the second Star Master. I've come to express my gratitude for saving me, he said. The Demon King remained silent. So did Planus. Then suddenly Kratos' expression turned furious. Planus froze. Did I do something wrong? All the Demon King could think was how dare he come empty-handed, not even a drink, or fruit. Planus continued awkwardly, I've begun gathering some of Rusterstep's former subordinates. I'll put them to work soon. But Kratos wasn't set listening. He was too distracted, still dreaming about harvesting his potatoes and turning them into chunos. I want to see these demons eat until they stare full for once. He stopped to reflect. Why did I start doing all this in the first place? Meanwhile, Planus politely excused himself. I'll prepare the troops, he said, departing the plantation. The Demon King watched him go. He's one of the weakest and least developed Star Masters, he thought, but I like his confidence and his loyalty to demonkind. Then he paused. Technically isn't Set that guy a plant? The realization made him grin. That might actually be useful. As Planus walked through the plantation, he felt the earth beneath his feet. The soil was rich, more fertile than anything he had ever encountered, so full of nutrients. He remembered his past. He had never grown from the earth. He was just a seedling that never matured. But this soil, it was different. This was cultivated by Lord Kratos. Without hesitation, he activated his ability and began to root himself deep into the mountain. In this terrain, I can become stronger. Strong enough to become the Demon King. His roots spread silently beneath the surface. The next day, dawn broke. The Demon King stood tall in front of his troops. It sets time for the demonic morning exercises. The agricultural troop responded with fiery enthusiasm, immediately moving into position. He led them in synchronized drills as they shouted in unison, their voices echoing across the farmland. Another day had begun, one step closer to harvest, and one step closer to reshaping the future of demonkind. The Demon King watched his army with pride. At first, the lower demons had been clumsy and disorganized, but now, after rigorous training and hard work, they moved in perfect sync with his commands. They had potential, he was certain of it. To test them, he barked out a sudden order, roll to the left. Without hesitation, the entire agricultural troop obeyed flawlessly. He followed up with, roll to the right. Once again, not a single mistake. He nodded, satisfied. Working in the agricultural fields demanded stamina, and now they were capable of functioning even without direct supervision. Just then, General Toronto came running in. panic, in his voice. He shouted that something terrible had occurred. The potato leaves had turned yellow. This alarmed the Demon King. Everyone rushed to the field and witnessed the dramatic change. The leaves had indeed yellowed. Zafiros stood frozen, wondering if this meant their efforts had been in vain. Sergi appeared disheartened. Even Hardtalk was rattled, questioning whether the failure was due to a lack of wind, water, or something else. He cursed himself for placing so much hope in what now seemed like a foolish dream. The Demon King, calm and curious, stepped forward. He crouched down, gently grabbed a sprout, and pulled out a potato. The moment left everyone stunned. Though the skin of the potatoes was pale, their size was enormous, 2 or 3 times bigger than the first batch they had planted. A slow smile spread across Crito's face. He declared that the leaves had merely sacrificed their nutrients to grow the potatoes, bigger, better, and tastier than before. This was proof of their success. He praised his demons, telling them that this outcome was only possible because of their collective effort. The generals were moved by his words. Their hard work had not been in vain. Later that night, the Demon King lay in bed, reflecting on the praise he had given. It triggered memories of his previous life, of a tomato plant he once cared for, and the warm praise he received from his grandmother. He remembered how proud she had been, only for that memory to turn dark, recalling the day she was taken away in an ambulance. The image of her intubated and dying still haunted him, but he quickly shook off the sentiment. A Demon King wasn't supposed to feel these things. He reminded himself that while they had plenty of potatoes for now, relying on a single crop was dangerous. One plague could wipe out everything. Just like the Irish famine, new seeds needed to be planted soon. Suddenly, a violent tremor jolted him from his thoughts. A deafening crack split the air as a monstrous root burst from the ground, tearing through the castle walls. Kratos stared in shock at the massive branch growing before him. "What in the hell is that?" he muttered. Meanwhile, Flute remained in the fields. Examining the fallen leaves, she remembered the Demon King's words that when potatoes matured, the leaves would fall. Still, something felt off. Digging frantically, she unearthed a patch, only to find the potatoes had vanished. Alarmed, she turned to run and warn the others, but froze in place as enormous branches engulfed the castle. Inside, Kratos was ensnared by thick vines. From the shadows emerged the Star Master Planus. He mocked Kratos, calling him an insect. The Demon King couldn't believe it. Planus, who had just thanked him for saving his life, had transformed into this monstrous being. Planus explained that the nutrient-rich soil cultivated by Kratos had accelerated his growth. Realization struck the Demon King like a thunderbolt. His plantation, his hard work had been stolen and corrupted. Rage boiled over. He cursed Planus and demanded to know what he had done, but the Star Master only sneered and flung him across the field like a ragdoll. Kratos crashed into the ground, seriously injured. Elsewhere, chaos reigned. The generals rushed to understand what was happening. Bahal pleaded to be released so he could save the Demon King, but Sergi and Asura stopped him, insisting it was suicide to go up against a star demon. Yet Bahal didn't care. He admitted he once viewed the Demon King as weak, but having been saved by him, he now understood his strength and fragility. The castle crumbled. Utdas absorbed the last of the nutrients, and rose in a colossal form. The Demon King, too injured to resist, plummeted from the sky like a fallen star. The generals looked on in horror. Zafiros' voice trembled as he questioned whether this monster truly was Planus. Standing atop the ruin, Planus declared that Kratos was dead. A silence fell over the battlefield. The generals, the baby dragon, even the lowest demons, all were stunned. Flute's cries echoed across the wasteland. Planus, drunk with power, reminded them of the ancient demon law. Power belongs to the strongest. He proclaimed himself the new Demon King, and demanded they bow before him. Hardtalk hesitated, but ultimately lowered his head. He could feel it. Planus had drained all the nutrients from the land, and now stood as the strongest among them. Sergi, Bahal, and Asura followed suit. Zapiro, speechless, watched as Four Eyes bowed beside him. Even he had no choice but to kneel. And there, beneath the shadow of the new tyrant, Zafiros broke down in tears, mourning the death of his king. Meanwhile, the Demon King Kratos found himself in a strange place. A voice called out to him, soft and familiar. It was his mother, from when he was just a child, asking him to play hide and seek. The scene felt distant, like a dream. He hesitantly asked if it was one. His mother smiled and told him to close his eyes tight, saying she would count to 10, and then he could try to find her. The child version of Kratos did just that. He covered his eyes and counted aloud. When he reached 10, he opened his eyes and began calling for his mother, but she was nowhere to be found. Panic set in. He shouted for her, his voice trembling, asking if he could count to 10 again, and if that would make her appear, but no answer came. From the shadows of memory, Kratos watched silently, his head bowed. All that young boy could do was cry, begging his mother to come out, promising that he had finished counting. Then a cold mechanical voice broke through. A system message called out to Zhang Chol, urging him to wake up. His eyes snapped open. Disoriented, he asked the voice where it was and if he had died. The system replied, telling him to move, because if he did, there was still a chance to survive. He wanted to activate the glitch, but quickly realized there was no space to even turn his body. Still, he noticed that he could move one hand. That was enough. Slowly, painfully, he began to dig. Even though it hurt, he pressed on. He couldn't afford to give up. Meanwhile, outside, Planis, the Star Master, called Zapharos to his side. Zapharos introduced himself as the records secretary. Planis instructed him to document the moment carefully. This, he declared, was the first grand step toward their new conquest, the invasion of human lands. Their goal was clear: dominate the humans and raise them like cattle for food. Hardtalk sighed with bitter resentment, feeling like they had returned to the dark origins of demonkind. Asura, on the other hand, welcomed the chaos, eager to fight and kill again. Sergi rationalized it, believing that this was simply the way demons had always lived. Bahal remained silent, but within all the generals, a strange irritation began to stir, an unease they couldn't explain. Beneath the rubble, Kratos continued digging, but breathing was growing harder. He felt his heart faltering, and panic threatened to consume him. Above ground, Planis gave the command, "Arm yourselves. It's time to march." But Zapharos spoke up, warning that launching a war now was impossible. The room froze. Planis did not like the challenge, and his stare unsettled every general present. Zapharos quickly clarified, they didn't have enough food. The remaining potatoes wouldn't feed even half the army. Planis smirked. If food is the problem, he said, then we already have plenty. Without warning, he used his branches to seize Flute, holding the terrified girl high above. Her father screamed in horror, catching Asura's immediate attention. Planis declared that the weak and useless demons, like Flute and others, would now become food. Flute cried out in desperation, yelling that things had changed, that they didn't need to devour each other anymore. She screamed louder, reminding everyone that the king had promised them a different future. But Planis had no sympathy. He released her. Below, still buried, Kratos realized that his heart was beginning to stop. In that moment, he made a choice. If he died, the demons would starve again. He opened his eyes and struck himself with bloody impact, electrocuting his own heart to restart it. Then he resumed digging, screaming, summoning whatever strength he had left. Slowly, painfully, he pushed upward through the earth. Back above, just before Flute could hit the ground, Asura caught her in his arms. Everyone stood stunned. Flute was speechless. Planis's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Asura said nothing at first, trying to hide his actions by claiming the girl was his snack, and he'd had his eye on her, but Planis wasn't buying it. With a furious swing, he struck Asura with a branch, sending him flying past the generals and rendering him unconscious. Zapharos could only watch, helpless. Planis turned back to his army and once again ordered them to prepare for battle. But suddenly, Four Eyes gathered his courage and shouted, "There is no just reason to do this." A branch whipped toward him, but before it could land, Bahal jumped in, blocking the attack with his axe, standing tall in defiance. Planis grew more enraged. Bahal shouted, reminding everyone that the Demon King had given the secretary a mission. If Zapharos dies, who will count the potatoes? The Star Master sneered. "Are you suggesting mutiny?" Hardtalk stepped forward immediately, denying it. "Absolutely not," he said. "That would be unthinkable." But he did not retreat. "We simply believe that the former Demon King Sep's proposal to invest in agriculture was a far wiser path." Sergi added his voice. "The previous Demon King showed us a way to live where no one had to die. Why should we go to war when there is already a better solution?" Planis had heard enough. His patience snapped. He was being challenged. At that moment, Planis began summoning a flurry of roots, shouting arrogantly that he was the strongest among them and that everyone should submit to him. But the generals didn't flinch. Instead, they stood their ground, declaring that true strength came not from dominance but from justice. The tension exploded. All the generals prepared for battle. From the ranks of the lower demons, furious voices rose. They cried out that their true king was Kratos, and accused Planis of destroying the plantation that once sustained them. They swore he would pay for his crimes. Without hesitation, Planis's roots lashed out, aiming to crush the revolting demons. But Hardtalk stepped in. Summoning his mist barrier, he shielded the agricultural troops from the onslaught. Then, in a single coordinated move, Bahal lifted Sergi and hurled her into the air, giving her the perfect vantage to slice through the attacking branches. With unwavering fury in her eyes, Sergi locked her gaze onto the Star Master and shouted, "I still start by tearing out your eye." But Planis only laughed. Not only did he block her attack with ease, he also captured the other generals with terrifying speed. Then, towering above them, he declared they would be sent straight to the canopy punishment for daring to oppose the new Demon King. With disdain, he bragged that he was 1,000 times more magnificent than Kratos. whom he dismissed as a pathetic weakling. He unleashed wave after wave of destruction on the troops, continuing to mock the former king. Kratos died without even reacting. What was so special about that fool? He scoffed. I saw nothing in him worth remembering. Planus raised his hand to deal a final blow, this time aimed at Sophros, who was still shielding Flute with his own body. But then, a voice cut through the chaos. It was calm, but unmistakable. Why damage my self-esteem like that? Everyone froze. The dust shifted, and out of the rubble stepped Kratos alive. He raised his fist and effortlessly blocked Planus' crushing strike just before it could land on Zapharos. Then, with a single motion, he pulverized the branch into dust. Planus stared, stunned, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. Flute, however, burst into a radiant smile. Her king was alive. Then, a system notification appeared before them all, revealing the truth. The host has acquired a new system and ability at the brink of death. Concentrated nutrition has been activated. And just like that, the tide of fate had shifted once again. 10 minutes earlier he had been weak, so weak that he could barely open his eyes. Exhaustion weighed down his body, and in that fragile state, he suddenly remembered his grandmother. Her voice echoed in his mind. She had once asked him why he seemed so defeated, and his reply had been that he was simply too tired to go on. He questioned why anyone should keep living when life felt so cruel. For a moment, she remained silent. Then, with gentle wisdom, she spoke. She told him that all living beings were like seeds. A seed must struggle, digging through the earth, breaking free, and sprouting upward. Though the process is hard, when one seed sprouts, it inspires others to grow. In time, many will bloom into strong trees or beautiful flowers. But he had shouted back, rejecting her words as nonsense. He demanded to know why. If her belief was true, his kind father had worked himself to death, and why his mother had abandoned them. In his anger, he called himself a rotten seed. Tearfully, he swore that from then on he would live only for himself, chasing wealth and success, just as his mother had done. Some time later, everything changed. His grandmother's health declined, and she was placed on life support. When he rushed to her side, she used what little strength she had left to call him close. Barely able to speak, she whispered that he too was a seed, one destined to bloom into a beautiful flower. Now back in the present, those words returned to him. He realized he could not give up. Summoning every ounce of willpower, he unleashed his bloody impact with all his strength. A notification immediately appeared before his eyes. It stated that he had endured the agony of death and rebirth, his spirit surpassing its limits. As a result, a new system had been unlocked. The Monas system. Confused, he frowned. He had never heard of such a system in the game. Another notification followed, explaining that, as a reward for surviving 3 successful resurrections, the system began at level 3. The Monas system amplified all of his attributes with a multiplier. At its current level, his stats were enhanced by 1.3 times. He quickly realized this meant his attributes had increased by 30%. Even so, he doubted it would be enough to escape the ruins. Suddenly, another option appeared. An ability called Concentrated Nutrition. This skill allowed him to gather all his attributes into a single stat for 10 minutes, though it could only be used once per day. His eyes widened. At present, his resistance, mental strength, physical strength, dexterity, and magical power were all at 30%. Without hesitation, he activated the ability and funneled everything into physical strength. His power skyrocketed until it reached a staggering 155%. With newfound might, he forced himself upright. The ground trembled beneath his movements, until at last, he broke free, his body rising from the earth. Standing tall, he faced his enemy. Planus could hardly believe his eyes. The Demon King was still alive. The man spoke with a cold warning. He had returned. The other demons gasped. It was truly Kratos standing before them. Overcome with joy, they celebrated the return of their Demon King of the Harvest. The baby dragon too cried out in happiness and ran straight to its master. Hartok silently sighed in relief, grateful he had not lost his king. Sergei smiled, but deep down he doubted they could truly stop the overwhelming power of Planus. Even Bahal admitted to himself that defeating such a foe seemed impossible. Planus, however, laughed darkly. He claimed to enjoy this twist, since now he could crush them all at once. But Kratos firmly declared that no one else would die. To him, the brute might be massive, but he recognized the familiar rhythm of a game pattern. His confidence grew as he recalled the flawless synchronization of his agricultural troops during training. Raising his voice, he commanded them to follow his lead. It was time for their warm-up. The demons immediately aligned themselves in perfect formation. Planus struck, but Kratos shouted for everyone to dodge left. In flawless unison, they leapt aside, evading the attack. Another strike came, and he ordered them right. Again they moved as one. The next command had them drop low and roll continuously. Afterward they turned their backs and jumped backward, mocking their foe with synchronized precision. Planis raged in disbelief. How could they all evade him so effortlessly? Jung Cho, impressed by the group's performance, knew that the enemy would soon need to recover. At that moment, he shouted for everyone to turn and point forward. Together, they did so, mocking the massive tree-like beast. Enraged, Planis roared and summoned giant roots in a frenzy. Kratos smiled, recognizing that his opponent had now entered berserker mode. Up until this moment, they had been bound by the rules of the game, but from here on, the rules of real life would decide the outcome. He gave a single command. T-Bone was to advance. The baby dragon obeyed instantly, unleashing a blast of icy breath that struck Planis squarely in the face. The main character knew that even with his boosted strength, simply punching would be useless. But then he reminded himself, the enemy was still a plant, and plants had a weakness. If frozen with extreme cold, their internal volume expanded, tearing tissues apart from within. That was exactly what began to happen. The roots started to crack. He watched with satisfaction as the baby dragon weaved through them, leaving a trail of destruction. The giant fig tree, Planis, seemed utterly confused by what was happening. Seeing the devastation, the MC shouted, taunting his opponent. Planis could no longer withstand the pressure. His massive body began to splinter and weaken. Exhausted, the MC nearly collapsed, but the baby dragon flew back to him, clutching his arm to help him stay on his feet. He whispered his thanks, then declared that he needed to deliver the final blow. Crouching low, he gathered momentum and hurled himself upward with all his power. He spotted the weak point he had been searching for, the gaping hole in Planis's body. He slammed his fist forward with everything he had. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then suddenly the entire spot collapsed, and Planis roared in agony. Zephyros was stunned. It appeared the Demon Lord had finally been defeated, but just then a notification flashed. The nutrient concentration time limit had expired. The MC's strength drained away, and Yang Kiel began plummeting in freefall. Planis continued to scream, his enormous body growing weaker and weaker, his eyes dimmed then shut, until he went completely still. The secretary stared in disbelief, wondering if he had truly died, since the towering body remained upright and motionless. The MC lying on the ground found this strange. In the game, such enemies always shattered into nothing. Why was the tree still standing? The thought unsettled him. Then the ground shifted. A sprout erupted from the soil. From it, a new form of Planis emerged. The MC's eyes widened in shock. What was happening? To make matters worse, he couldn't move his body. The Demon Lord's new form was unlike anything before. His presence alone sent unease through all the demons. Planis explained coldly. He had absorbed the immense nutrients of the land. He admitted he had been close to death but had condensed his power into a new body. He declared himself a cursed seed that had sprouted from a poisonous swamp, and now, infused with the Demon King's power, he had poisoned the world itself. Then he raised his voice, ordering Kratos to die once and for all. Before he could strike, Bahal charged forward, slamming his axe into Planis's neck, but the blade barely sank 3 centimeters. Enraged, Planis swatted Bahal aside with a single slap, hurling him across the battlefield. Next came Sergi, attacking with all her arms, only to be struck hard in the stomach. Hardtalk rushed in with his demonic punch, but it barely fazed the Demon Lord. He was slammed into the ground with brutal force. At last Asura stepped forward, summoning his ability, Abundant Harvest, Genesis. He unleashed a dazzling strike that severed Planis's head. Kratos stared in shock. The impossible had happened. The Demon Lord's body began to disintegrate, roots collapsing into green particles that drifted into the air until nothing remained. Relief washed over them all. Kratos exhaled, satisfied. The elite demons cheered, though their bodies were exhausted. Then the secretary stepped forward, declaring he would record this battle as proof of the Demon King's army's victory. Hardtalk, despite his injuries, raised his arm high and roared for everyone to salute the Demon King. Immediately, the demons obeyed, their voices rising in celebration of Kratos, the true Demon King of the harvest. But suddenly Kratos shouted for them to stop. Silence fell. Slowly he turned his eyes to the land around him. His heart sank. The fields lay in ruins. The soil was dead, the leaves brittle. Dropping to his knees, he realized the truth. Everything had been destroyed. Cultivation would have to start again from the very beginning. Bitterness filled him. They would face hunger once more. He clenched his fists, unwilling to force his people to suffer through such cruelty again. Around him, the demons stood in silence, watching their king in despair. Then a faint green light appeared. A small energy orb descended onto a dead leaf. The moment it touched, the leaf revived, brimming with nutrients. Zephyros, witnessing this, felt a memory stir. He recalled the time when so many demons, including himself, had been imprisoned. Back then they had believed that nothing mattered, that they were nothing more than livestock meant for slaughter. In that memory, Zephyros recalled the day a demon had unlocked the prison cell. The moment the door swung open, the captives bolted in fear, scrambling for their lives. Yet one child remained unmoved. He stood still, showing no reaction at all. The demon grew irritated. The more he stared, the more the boy's indifference enraged him. Finally furious, he grabbed Zephyros by the collar and lifted him high. But even then, the child showed no fear. Losing his patience, the demon raised his sword, ready to strike without mercy. Before the blade could fall, the Demon King appeared. With one swift motion, he seized the brute's head and tore it clean off, sending it rolling across the ground. Turning to the boy, he asked why he had not panicked or begged for his life. Zephyros replied calmly that he felt no fear. In truth, he believed death was inevitable. No matter how much they struggled, survival was impossible, so the only mercy left was to shorten the time of fear before death arrived. The Demon King smiled at this answer. He saw something in the child, something different. Rather than let him die as fodder, he ordered the boy to follow. Naming him the Demon Scribe, he declared it would be a waste to let such potential go to nothing. Then, as they left the cell, the king vowed that one day he himself would end the tragedy of demons devouring their own brothers. That memory faded, and Zephyros' eyes fell upon his king. Kratos knelt in despair, devastated by the destruction of everything they had worked for. Zephyros remained quiet for a moment, then turned, picked up a hoe and began digging. The elite demons looked on in confusion, until they realized the secretary had returned to work. Hartok's eyes lit up. He roared to the agricultural troop that it was time to prepare the soil. Without hesitation, they grabbed their tools and rushed into action. The MC watched in disbelief. His entire army was humming, working the land with smiles on their faces. He realized he could not show weakness anymore. Rising to his feet, he gave orders. The first division was to search for any surviving potatoes. The second and third divisions would form a water line with hoses. Sergi was tasked to cut leftover seeds, Hartok to command the first division, and Asura to collect tools. Then, with all his strength, he shouted that he wanted to see a bountiful harvest. The demons raised their tools high, asking for the blessing of the harvest. Bahal clenched a rope between his teeth and dragged demons like a plow across the soil. Kratos, watching, thought to himself how he had nearly forgotten the endless struggles of farm life, natural disasters, pests, inflation, climate shifts, and even war. Yet still, the soil was tilled. It was then Flute noticed something. To the side, an intact potato vine stood untouched. She rushed to pull it out, but no matter how hard she tried, it wouldn't budge. Suddenly, Asura appeared, gripping her hand. He urged her to hold tighter, and together they pulled. To their shock, a massive cluster of potatoes burst out of the ground, far more than they had imagined. One even flew through the air, striking Ruster squarely on the head as he lay on the ground, still being used as a lightning rod. Asura and Flute stared in disbelief. Flute grabbed the largest potato and ran to the MC, showing him the miracle. Kratos held it in his hand, stunned. Was it real? She told him she had only pulled up one small vine, and this treasure had appeared. Then it clicked. In the game, after defeating Planus, sprouts would appear, symbols of his nutrients returning to the earth. But this Planus had been 1,000 times larger, which meant the quality and the area of effect were greater as well. His voice rang out. He commanded the agricultural troop to dig. Now. The ground erupted with potatoes. Everywhere they looked, massive crops emerged, unbelievable in size and number. The demons gasped, their arms filled with harvest. Kratos' heart leapt as Zephyros turned to him, asking softly if this was an abundant harvest. With tears in his eyes, Kratos smiled and shouted that yes, it truly was, an abundant harvest. His people could finally eat their fill. Later, back at the cabin, Kratos sat deep in thought. He began to review the state of the abandoned lands. The first stellar area, once ruled by Sheol, had fallen after his rebellion. The heart of the frost spirit had been extinguished. His henchmen vanished. That land was now empty. The second stellar area, ruled by Planus, had collapsed. Its soldiers stood frozen in shock, their lord destroyed. The third stellar area was under Ruster, the same demon now used as a lightning rod. Kratos wondered if Ruster's minions would face punishment for their betrayal. The fourth stellar area belonged to Tarthu, the Cobra Man. In the game, Tarthu had been one of the most loyal. Kratos remembered this well. He considered uniting the survivors of the second and fourth areas. It would strengthen their forces, but he hesitated. More hands would help, but more mouths would need feeding. With only one harvest ahead of them, he knew they had to proceed carefully. The army's growth would need to wait until the next abundant harvest. At that moment, Zephyros entered and announced that the preparations for the giant Shunos had begun, just as ordered. Soon after, a small demonic beast fluttered inside, reporting that it had delivered the wait orders to every region. The MC frowned. Could the regions be trusted to obey quietly, or had resistance already begun? The creature hesitated before admitting that the fourth stellar area had not obeyed. Frustration boiled in Kratos. Why not? He demanded. But the creature, confused, only replied that they hadn't said anything too bad. The MC pressed again, asking if they hadn't even questioned the reason for their refusal. The small imp blinked, baffled. Who exactly was he supposed to ask? Enraged, Kratos shot up from his seat, shouting at the little lizard. What he wanted to know was not what they said, but why the Lord of the Fourth Area had disobeyed. Trembling, the beast admitted that when he went there, the Lord was nowhere to be found. Only servants remained, and the place was deserted. Kratos clenched his fists, furious that such an urgent message had been left with mere attendants. His anger swelled to the point where he felt as if he might die from it. To him, the exchange was like speaking with some incompetent telemarketer who could answer nothing. Zapharos, watching, quietly reflected that although Kratos was the kindest of the demon lords, he was still a demon. His monstrous face never let anyone forget it. He stepped forward, taking the matter into his hands, and asked the creature if the servants had mentioned the whereabouts of Tarthu, Lord of the Fourth Area. The flying lizard nodded nervously. From what he understood, Tarthu had gone into human territory to gather corpses and use them as fertilizer. The MC froze. His mind raced. In the game, this was the exact moment when the former paladin awakened, triggering the Great Demon Invasion. The paladin, driven by vengeance, began a holy extermination. Kratos knew what that meant. If no demon crossed into human lands, the paladin would not awaken. But if Tarthu attacked, all demons would be annihilated. There would be no stopping it. Without another thought, he bolted. His secretary called after him, asking where he was going, but Kratos only shouted back that he had to stop that fool at all costs. Four Eyes couldn't understand why he would go alone. Kratos answered only that alone was faster. Then he remembered, after defeating Planus, his mana seed had leveled up to 4. Now he could activate the nutrient route, investing all attributes into agility. His speed surged by 160%. In a flash, he vanished into the horizon, determined to take every shortcut across the demon lands to reach Tarthu in time. Ahead lay dangerous ground. In the abandoned lands stood the tomb of the Paladin, also known as the Tower of Life. That was where the Paladin once met the Alba group. And not far from there was the village of the Exiled. Further south lay the critical border between demons and humans, Fortress Magrat. At the fortress, the guards spotted movement in the distance. They recognized the returning emissary, Azrahan. But where were the soldiers that should have been with him? Suspicion spread. Some even muttered insults at the cloaked figure walking beside him, not realizing who he truly was. When Azrahan's group reached the gates, they were welcomed by Walos, commander of the fortress. His first question was simple. Where were the soldiers who had departed with them? Azrahan replied gravely, monsters had attacked, and they barely made it back alive. The commander's expression hardened. The king had ordered them to explore the demon lands. He knew sacrifices were inevitable, but every fallen soldier had been an excellent warrior. Still, he told Azrahan to enter and rest. The group passed through the gates one by one until the cloaked paladin reached the threshold. Walos stepped forward and blocked his way. You cannot pass, he declared. Azrahan and his partner froze in disbelief, but Kimchi the paladin only stood silent, his eyes fixed with a piercing, unshakable gaze. That aura alone was enough to make the commander shiver. Azrahan quickly intervened, insisting that this man was known to them, that he had saved him from monsters, but Walos scowled. Had Azrahan forgotten the rules? Only those who left through the gate were permitted to return through it. Del stepped in, attempting diplomacy. He reached into his pocket, offering coins as compensation for the misunderstanding, but the gesture backfired. Walos slapped him hard across the face. Furious, he demanded to know how such a horrid creature dared attempt to bribe him. The servant wept quietly, his cheek burning. Walos turned his blade toward Kimchi. Remove the cloak, he ordered coldly. If I find anything suspicious, I will kill you where you stand. Azrahan's heart pounded. He knew the truth. Under that cloak, there was nothing but suspicion. The paladin's gaze fixed on his injured friend lying helpless on the ground. A surge of fury erupted from him, and his aura grew so violent that Commander Walos stumbled back in shock. Before the tension could escalate further, the deep blare of a war horn shattered the air. A soldier rushed to the commander shouting the demons were approaching, thousands of them. Walos wasted no time. He ran to the fortress walls, rallying his men for the moment they had feared had finally arrived. The paladin turned his head toward the incoming army. Instinct took over. A primal desire to kill stirred within him, rising like an uncontrollable tide. His body felt as though it were no longer his own. Far away, the MC sprinted desperately, praying that the Lord of the Fourth Stellar Area would not make the fatal mistake of attacking the fortress. He knew the truth. If the demons attacked, they would all die. The ground shook, as demon lizards charged with massive battering rams, slamming them against the fortress gates. Archers loosed volleys of arrows, but the monsters pressed on, their scales shrugging off the shafts. With brutal strength, they hurled stones and swung weapons, cutting down archers in droves. The relentless army battered the gate, determined to break through. Inside, the defenders huddled in fear. Even Kimchi, cloaked and silent, reflected on his own unease. Why had he rushed forward, ready to fight? Was it instinct, or something left behind from his 19th reincarnation? His memories told him he had always killed out of duty, never passion. If Azarhan hadn't pulled him back earlier, he might already be fighting mindlessly. He looked around. Every human trembled with fear. Perhaps, he thought, that was reason enough to fight. A thunderous crack split the air. The fortress gate was collapsing. Panic rippled through the defenders. At last, the gate gave way, and the demon lizards stormed inside. Their leader bellowed, "Kill everyone, turn them into fertilizer." On the ramparts, Commander Walos shouted his own desperate order, "Destroy the rear bridge." Even if they died here, not a single demon could be allowed to return to the continent. Soldiers obeyed without hesitation. The bridge exploded, cutting off retreat for both sides. Dial's face turned pale. He despaired at the sound of the bridge's destruction. "We're trapped, we'll die here," he muttered, lamenting that he hadn't even married yet. Azarhan, grim as ever, tried to console him but failed. "Even if you survived, you wouldn't set Mary anyway." Dial glared, offended. "That sips no consolation at all. In the next life I shall be noble, and I shall work you to death as my servant." Before their quarrel could continue, the earth trembled violently. A demon lizard smashed through the wall, collapsing stone and timber alike. Screams erupted as the beast reached into the crowd and snatched a little girl. She shrieked for her mother, who could only cry helplessly in return. Azarhan bolted forward, desperate to save her, but before he could reach the beast, Kimchi moved. In an instant, the demon was obliterated by a single strike. Dio froze, horrified and bewildered by the sheer destructive power. Azarhan caught the girl as she fell, clutching her safely to his chest. Kimchi, however, did not pause. He leapt into the city square, landing directly before the leader of the invading demons. The monstrous commander reeled back, startled, as his eyes focused on the strange figure in a maid's disguise. For a moment, Tarthu could only stare, confused by the bizarre sight. Something about it felt wrong. Kimchi spoke calmly. "I do not want to fight. Leave the fortress." The demon lord scoffed. Was this a joke? A man dressed so ridiculously, giving orders? He sneered and asked what would happen if they refused. Kimchi inhaled slowly, then answered with cold certainty. "If you do not leave, everyone will die." Enraged, a demon lizard leapt forward to strike him. Kimchi closed his eyes, bracing himself. There was no choice anymore. His eyes snapped open, terrifying, blazing with power. His voice cut like steel. "Very well, I will accept my destiny as the executioner this world needs." At the height of the standoff, a sudden blur of motion cut through the chaos. The MC appeared out of nowhere, his foot slamming into a demon lizard and sending the creature flying. Kimchi froze, confused, his eyes widening as he tried to understand what he had just witnessed. Kratos, breathing heavily, exhausted from the long sprint, looked up. His heart nearly stopped. Standing before him was his own past avatar, the very image of the character he once played. Panic seized him. He knew all too well how powerful that form truly was. The demon commander Tarthu tried to speak, but before a word escaped his mouth, Kratos kicked him down and began stomping on him mercilessly. "Why did you invade the human kingdom?" he roared. The demon tried to give an explanation, but Kratos cut him off. "Spare me your excuses, just die already." He glanced over his shoulder, checking to see if Kimchi was watching. Confirming that he was, Kratos pressed harder, driving his heel into Tarthu's face again and again. His voice thundered with rage. "We could have lived in peace, quietly, planting potatoes, far from sight. There was no need for this war, no need for blood." His fury boiled over, yet deep inside he prayed desperately, "Paladin, don't kill me, don't kill my army." Kimchi Sist's voice cut through his thoughts. "I know you." Kratos froze, sweat trickling down his face. Slowly he turned. The Paladin Sip's eyes burned as he asked, "Are you not the Demon King?" A cold wave of dread washed over Kratos. "I'm finished," he thought. From the battlefield, warriors, both human and demon, turned their heads. They had heard the title spoken aloud. Though too far to catch every word, they knew one thing. The Paladin and the so-called Demon King were speaking face to face. Trembling, Kratos stammered, "I don't know any," said Kratos, says to the name of some kind of computer. Kimchi frowned, not understanding the word but certain of what he saw. "You are the Lord of Demons. I know it." Panic surged. Kratos knew that if he stayed passive, Kimchi would strike with full force. He had no choice. He dropped low, slamming both hands against the earth and driving his horns into the ground. The entire battlefield froze. Humans and demons alike stared at the bizarre sight. The Demon King upside down, horns embedded in the dirt. Kimchi blinked. Baffled, the demons murmured among themselves. Was this some kind of strategy, an intimidation ritual? Finally one of them called out, "My lord, what are you doing?" With his face pressed to the soil, Kratos shouted back, "It is a kneeling salute, a gesture of repentance, of utmost gratitude." He swore he had no intent of invading human territory, claiming the rogue lizard had acted on its own. Kimchi shook his head. "I cannot believe a demon sips words." Kratos bent lower still, pleading, "Then let me apologize 100 times if I must." His horns struck the earth again and again, creating a rhythmic pounding. The demon lizards, misinterpreting, were awestruck. To them, the motion looked like an enraged bull digging into the ground, fitting, even majestic for their king. But Kimchi noticed something strange. 10 strikes, a pause. 10 more, another pause. Always in perfect sets of 10. Something about the pattern stirred a memory. In his mind's eye, he saw a player's hand gripping a controller, always tapping, always moving in that rhythm. 10 rolls, 10 dodges, 10 taps, even when no enemies were around. A voice echoed, "I apologize, Ultra Plus Master. I just want to live." The words stuck with Kimchi. They were not demonic, not monstrous, simply human. At last he lowered his weapon. "Stop." Kratos, dripping with cold sweat, looked up in disbelief. Kimchi Sipsa's voice rang firm. "Leave. Before I change my mind." Relief crashed over Kratos like a wave. He wasted no time. He dragged Tarthu to his feet and handed him command. "Take over, now." His voice cracked with urgency. Then, turning to the battlefield, he roared, "4 generals, retreat. All forces withdraw immediately." The demons hesitated, bewildered, but the order came from their king. They obeyed. One by one, the army pulled back, streaming past the silent paladin. Kimchi stood still, his weapon lowered, and simply turned his back. The battle was over. Tarthu stirred back to life, groggy but seething with rage, his eyes locked onto Kimchi. "Filthy trash," he spat, his voice dripping venom. Without hesitation he leapt from the MC's shoulder and hurled himself straight at the paladin. Kratos froze in horror. "No, don't do it," he cried, panic lacing his words. But it was too late. With a single effortless motion, Kimchi struck. The lizard's body was obliterated instantly, torn apart, scattered across the battlefield in a rain of gore. The MC's blood ran cold. His gaze rose, and there it was again, his old avatar staring at him with a killing aura that chilled him to the bone. The situation had turned dire once more. But then, the unexpected. Kimchi spoke. "I saw what happened. That demon acted on its own. It was not your command." The MC blinked, stunned. Relief and disbelief tangled within him. Without another word, Kimchi turned to leave. Yet before departing fully, his voice cut sharp across the field. "If you ever step near human territory again, I will kill you, mercilessly." Kratos stood frozen, the words echoing inside him, heavy as stone. Inside the fortress, Azran was waiting. "Where were you?" he demanded, his tone worried. "You vanished. We were all concerned." Kimchi simply answered, "I had to deal with a fight." The commander approached then, bowing low. His voice carried humility. "Forgive my earlier rudeness. We all saw it, how you crushed the demons and even forced one to kneel. Truly you are no ordinary man." The emissary Sip's eyes widened. He had never known his new companion possessed such strength. Walos, ever-spirited, raised his voice for all to hear. 3 cheers for Mr. Kimchi, defender of our fortress." The call rippled through the ranks. Soldiers raised their fists, saluting the hero who had shielded them from annihilation. Kimchi stood among them in silence. Yet within, a strange warmth spread. For the first time in his 20th life, he had broken the endless cycle of carnage. He had chosen life, not slaughter, and he liked the outcome. But then, as he shifted, his cloak fell open. The crowd gasped. His strange clothes, out of place in this world, were suddenly revealed to all. Shock painted every face. Far away, across the desert sands, the MC led the demon army in retreat. His pace was furious, annoyance bubbling inside him. Hunting rogue demons had delayed him, and he hated the wasted time. Turning to his soldiers he bellowed, "Behave. No one is to invade the human world again. Disobey and you all die." The demons muttered, "We only acted under Lord Tarthu Sip's orders." Ignoring them, Kratos pressed forward. He realized bitterly that without system glitches or shortcuts, the journey would be slower than ever. All he longed for was to return and oversee the planting of royal potatoes. Soon he came across an abandoned well. He stopped. If this system still functioned, it could have sped up his movement dramatically. For wells were once the very nodes of instant transport, but as a non-paladin, he could not activate them. Then it happened. A blinding glow burst forth, followed by a system notification. Encounter with paladin detected. New function unlocked. Teleportation via abandoned wells now available. Kratos barely had time to react before the force took him. His body twisted, pulled into the vortex, spinning like a whirlwind. The system's voice rang clear. All previously visited posts are now active. Select destination. His thoughts rushed. Beneath the Demon Lord's castle. There had been a post there, but was it destroyed during Planus' attack? The well is intact, the system replied. Relief filled him. Perfect. That SIP's where I want to go. The system confirmed, teleporting to Demon Lord's castle, basement. And with that, he was gone, screaming as the whirlwind dragged him through space. Meanwhile, inside the ruins, Asura was sifting through rubble with flute when a sudden glow erupted from beneath the ground. Her eyes widened in horror as the MC's grotesque face burst forth, shattering the floor. She froze in terror, then collapsed, fainting on the spot. Flute turned, horrified, only to see the Demon King stumbling forward, clutching his stomach. Then came the retching. He vomited violently, spewing across the stone floor. Asura's instinct screamed, and she hurled herself over Flute, shielding the girl as the filth splattered everywhere. Panic surged through her mind. Kratos groaned. Why? In the game, teleporting never made me sick. He spat again, disgusted. Still, as the nausea eased, a single thought came to him. If vomiting is the price of teleportation, then fine, I'll endure it. He straightened, determination returning. I'll mass-produce the royal big potato, no matter what. Later, back at the warehouse, he joined his secretary, who proudly displayed the stockpile. Look at all we've gathered, she said. Safari added, and Heart Talk has finished cleansing the mist. Kratos studied the mountain of potatoes. A strange feeling stirred within him. He climbed atop the pile, grabbing one in his hand. His eyes narrowed. This is garbage. The secretary stared, stunned. Garbage? What do you mean? He lifted another, inspecting it. All of them, smooth-skinned, worthless. Four Eyes understood instantly. Without eyes, they can set sprout. Can they? The MC frowned deeply as he examined the smooth potatoes. Exactly, he muttered. These things are sterile, worthless. Frustrated, he returned to his temporary castle and summoned the generals. Once gathered, he explained everything he had discovered. Hartok was the first to respond. From what I understand, the structure of the potato was forcibly altered. They become sterile mutations, incapable of germination. Bahal groaned, already irritated. So what? Does that mean we can even eat them? Sergei shook her head. That SEP's not the issue. We can eat them, yes, but we can plant them. Once the stock runs out, there will be no more. The MC spoke in his calm, commanding voice. Regardless, we couldn't depend solely on potatoes. They are vulnerable. A single disease could wipe them out. We need something else, something sustainable. Acura leaned forward, intrigued. And what do you have in mind? You know as well as we do, nothing grows in the Demon Kingdom except potatoes. The MC Sep's expression darkened, though his voice remained steady. That is true, but I know of a place where seeds are abundant. The room fell silent as he continued. The human lands. At once, every general reacted. Bahal's eyes gleamed with excitement, already imagining plunder and war. So invasion at last, he shouted, thrilled. But Sergei silenced him with a glare. Shut your mouth. Of all beings, the Demon King hates war the most. The MC did not answer. Instead, he turned to Afiros. You will begin producing giant chunos. Assist Hartok in commanding the agricultural troops. Then, with his grotesque face twisted into something resembling a grin, he added, as for myself, Bahal and Asira, we will go to the human lands. We will sell the chunos, and with the coin, we will buy seeds. He said nothing aloud, but inwardly his thoughts were sharp. We must avoid kimchi. That will complicate things. I have a plan for that as well. Bahal was quiet until his secretary broke the silence. My lord, I do not believe this is wise. The MC raised a brow. And why not? It is obvious, the secretary said firmly. We demons look as though we crawled out of hell itself. No human would mistake our faces for their own. They would attack on sight. He gestured toward Asura. Look at his skin. No human has such a color. And his expression alone screams killer. How could that go unnoticed? Before he could continue, Sergei seized him by the arm, displeased with the bluntness. But the secretary persisted. I have not lied. I speak only what reason demands. Asura Sip's fury erupted. Reason, you say? Then reason enough that I should kill you where you stand. Bahal broke in, smirking. But the fool is right. Look around, everyone here looks strange. Except me, of course. I look perfectly normal. Asura sneered. Absurd, if anything you stare the most demon-like of us all. Silence, Hartok roared. I am the only normal one here. The posture of a knight runs through me. Asura laughed cruelly. Normal? You mean you look like a rotting corpse? An old zombie in armor? And so the quarrel began. Insults flew. Tempers flared. Each general exposed their fragile pride, their hidden complexes about their monstrous forms. The MC watched, unamused. So fragile, all of them, he thought. Then stepping forward, he let his horrendous visage loom over them. Enough. The hall fell silent. Then, in a deadpan tone, he added, "Stop fighting, you stare all ugly. So ugly, it hurts." His words hit them like arrows. One by one, the generals slumped into depression, brooding in silence. The MC allowed himself a grim chuckle. Good, that worked. He called Zapiros forward. "Do you still have the item we seized from Sip's castle?" Zapiros nodded. "The ones we found in the secret passage." He revealed a pouch filled with strange writhing blue creatures. Even the seasoned generals recoiled, uncertain what they were. The MC Sep's smile turned wicked. "This is the metamorphosis elixir. Whoever consumes one transforms, shedding their demon form for something else. We will use them to disguise ourselves as humans and walk among them." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Sergi scowled. "You expect us to eat that?" "Of course," the MC said coldly. "There is no other way." Before anyone could protest further, Bahal seized one of the creatures. With a defiant grin, he shoved it into his mouth. Chewing loudly, his bravado faltered almost instantly, as his face twisted in disgust. "It's vile, disgusting," he gagged. But then his body began to glow. Smoke enveloped him, and within moments, a tall silhouette emerged. When the haze cleared, a strikingly handsome man with blazing red hair stood in Bahal's place. The generals were stunned. Kratos whispered, "So that sits what he is inside." Sergi, now eager, grabbed one of the creatures. She swallowed it quickly, determined to embrace her new form. Smoke swirled, but when it cleared, the room fell silent. She had become a llama. Zapiros stepped forward, holding up a mirror. "See for yourself." Her eyes widened. "A what?" Rage and humiliation burned in her voice. The MC forced Asura next. He choked down the creature unwillingly. The smoke rose once more, and when it cleared, he had become a shoebill stork, tall, grim, and bird-like. His fury was immediate. Finally, it was the MC's turn. He ate. The glow surrounded him, and as the smoke parted, he remained himself, a perfectly ordinary human, but one bearing the exact visage of the Demon King. He examined himself in the mirror. It was uncanny, unsettling, strange, but it will do. Turning to the others, one handsome man, one llama, one shoebill, he raised his voice. "Enough. It is time. We depart at once for the Seed expedition." And so the bizarre company set out, each with a role to play, bound for the human world. As the group prepared for departure, the MC suddenly froze. A sharp ding rang in his mind. His system issued a warning. While the metamorphosis effect is active, Happy Point support will be unavailable. The MC's expression soured immediately. He hated this restriction, though deep inside he recognized it was exactly like the game. Back then, any damage taken or ability used would break the transformation and return him to his original form. He clenched his teeth. "I must be careful. One mistake, and everything collapses." To reach the human lands, they used the abandoned well, an ancient shortcut. The MC was pleased to see that bringing everyone along required only that they hold hands. With a strange flash of energy, they were pulled across dimensions. The landing was rough. They hit the ground in the human realm and, almost instantly, everyone vomited from the spatial distortion. Kratos wiped his mouth, then stared ahead. A towering wall loomed before them. "How are we supposed to cross that?" he muttered. The MC's gaze lingered on the fortifications. The greatest danger was not the wall itself, but Kimchi. If the paladin happened to be nearby, everything would be ruined. He reassured himself that enough time had passed since their last encounter, and surely the man had already moved deeper inland. Still, a nervous tremor betrayed his unease. "If by some chance I am recognized, we are finished." They crept closer. Suddenly, the sharp blare of a trumpet echoed. Guards on the walls shouted down. "A suspicious group approaches." Weapons were readied. "Are they demons?" one soldier asked. But after peering more closely, the guards relaxed slightly. "No, just really ugly people." The group was escorted to the commander of the post, a stern man named Walos. He studied them in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke. "You are from the village of exiles. Arnset you have no permission to pass these gates. Return at once." Sergi and Asura, still trapped in their animal forms, bristled in frustration. They had known this plan was absurd. Acura snorted. As expected, impossible from the start. Kratos, however, remained calm. He knew from his countless playthroughs that after the demon invasion, humans grew far stricter at their borders. This reaction was natural. He had read the hidden diaries at least 10 times. He knew what had to be done. Fixing Walos with a serious gaze, he shifted his expression entirely and declared, "I carry an offering directly from the land of demons." Wolos's brow rose. Intrigued, The human king had long been curious about the demon realm, and had even dispatched emissaries to explore it. The commander's interest was hooked. The offerings, Wallace asked. You mean those animals behind you? The MC did not flinch. Sharp eyes, Commander. Indeed, these creatures were captured deep within the demon lands. Their very flesh is otherworldly. Sergi and Asura nearly exploded in outrage. Captured? Otherworldly meat? But the MC silenced them with a glare. Wallace frowned. You claim they are from the demon realm, yet one is clearly a pelican, the other an alpaca, common creatures. How is the king to be impressed with such livestock? The MC blinked. Pelicans, alpacas, in a medieval European world? What kind of absurd universe is this? The commander grew stern. This gift is not suitable. You will return at once. That was when Sergi lost her composure. Enraged, she blurted out, Alpa? The word caught Wallace completely off guard. He leaned forward. That pronunciation identical to a human tongue. So you are not an ordinary alpaca. Kratos seized the chance. With a flourish, he placed his hand on Sergi Sep's head. Precisely, she is no ordinary beast. She hails from the land of demons and imitates human speech. He gestured toward the shoebill, and this one can speak as well. Asura refused to cooperate, staring stone-faced at the humans. The MC's patience snapped. He yanked a handful of feathers from Asura's head. The bird screamed in agony. The Commander Sip's eyes widened. Incredible, exotic beyond question. At last, Wallace gave his verdict. Very well, you may pass. However though, you bring rare offerings. You are still of the exiled. You cannot roam freely in our kingdom. Coincidentally, royal emissaries reside in this capital. You will travel under their supervision. The MC ground his teeth in annoyance, but nodded. Leaving Sergi and Asura tied in a stable, the rest of the group was escorted to meet the emissaries. A tall man named Azrahan stepped forward. Greetings, he said, giving a formal bow. This man beside me is my servant. The MC introduced himself smoothly. I am Jang Chil, from the village of the exiled. This is Bahabal. The emissary Sip's expression tightened. The village of the exiled, you say? Strange. I spent months there. Never once did I see either of you. Immediately guards raised their blades, pressing steel against the MC and Bahabal Sip's throats. Are you demons? Another figure, Dial, waved a hand. Interesting. Wait. His eyes narrowed as he studied them, lingering on the MC Sep's strange aura. He is peculiar, perhaps peculiar enough to be offered as a gift to the king. Azrahan frowned. We cannot be careless. What if they are demons? Dial laughed. Nonsense. Impossible. Their words alone prove it. He brightened suddenly. Besides, they are unusual, and unusual things delight the king. The MC stayed perfectly calm, though inside he smirked. Excellent. This man is sharp. I can use him. The other weak, anemic. I'll bleed him dry and discard him. Azrahan wasted no time. We depart immediately, he announced. One of my companions waits to join us. He turned, and there stood Kimchi, the paladin. The MC froze. His entire body trembled like a leaf in the wind. His eyes widened as he stared into the face of his old avatar. For a split second, his guts churned so violently he nearly soiled himself. Somehow, through clenched teeth and forced calm, he managed to croak out, I'm Jang Chul. But inside, he was screaming. It's over. I'm dead. I've ruined everything. Kimchi Sip's gaze lingered on him for a long, dreadful moment. Then, instead of drawing his blade, the paladin simply said, Take better care of yourself. That skin tone, used to have liver problems. Relief crashed over the MC so hard he almost collapsed. Not recognized. The elixir, it worked. Still, the paladin's eyes did not leave him, and that constant attention gnawed at his nerves. Azrahan urged the group forward. We must move quickly. Time is short. They set off. By nightfall, they rested by a campfire. Shadows flickered across the paladin's armor, and the MC could not stop his thoughts from spiraling. If monsters attack, if bandits appear, if I take even one hit, the metamorphosis will end, and Kimchi will cut me down on the spot. He glanced toward the distant horizon. The capital was still far away, much too far for comfort. Their only purpose here was simple: sell the chunos, buy seeds, return. This long march was nothing but unnecessary danger. When he shifted his gaze back, he met Kimchi's eyes. The MC's heart lurched. He forced a smile, twisting his expression in desperation. But Kimchi's brow furrowed at once, suspicion flashing across his face. Cold sweat ran down the MC's back. Just meeting his eyes nearly tore my organs out of place. I cannot survive this. We must escape tonight. When the others retired to their cabins, the MC quietly shook Bahal awake. Get up, now. They slipped outside, their footsteps cautious, silent. Sergi trotted after them, confusion clear in her voice. What are we doing? Why sneak out in the middle of the night? The MC froze. Wait, Eustace speaking? Yes, she said matter-of-factly. I stayed quiet before. My mouth isn't set used to this form. Forget it, he hissed. We won't set needed anymore. The situation set's too dangerous. We finish the goal, then leave. If our identity set's discovered, we set finished. A deep voice cut through the night. What identity? They spun around. Kimchi stood in the darkness, expression cold, gaze sharp as a blade. The MC Sep's heart stopped. He heard. He knows. Meanwhile, far away, in the desolate land of Shaven Diontur, Hardtalk, commander of the demon forces, watched uneasily as a vast new army gathered. His secretary Zapiros stood at his side. Why are they here? Hardtalk demanded. I gave no summons. One demon stepped forward. It was the King Sip's order. We were told, we may eat as much as we wish. Hardtalk scowled. Nonsense. Until Kratos returns with seeds, there is no food to spare. From the shadows, a tree demon stumbled forward, pleading, Lord Hardtalk, take us back. Planis Sith's betrayal was not ours. More followed. Lizard demons collapsed at his feet, their voices weak. We have walked so far, starving. Please, food, anything. Soon, hundreds of new demons were on their knees, begging. Hardtalk Stet's jaw tightened. He turned to Zapiros. Supplies, how many giant potatoes remain? Plenty for now, Zapiros admitted, but this army is vast, and with no word of the King Sip's return, I cannot promise order will last. Hardtalk closed his eyes. Kratos' last words echoed in his memory. In my absence, you are the demon lord. Think, and decide, as a king would. The weight settled on his shoulders. Slowly he gave his first true command. Then hear me. Each race will divide and settle its own living areas. I will provide food. From this moment, order shall exist. The demons bowed, murmuring relief. Hardtalk exhaled, heavy with the burden of rule. For the first time he was not just a general, he was the one holding the demon realm together.